been a wicked week for sure.
Bro, no apologies needed.
Yeah.
No apologies. Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Yeah, we just
That's exciting.
we just announced it like last week, so she's like 13 weeks.
Good for you.
Yeah, dude, thanks. You got any kids of your own?
That's a loaded question. I picked up the lease on a few of them. So I have my daughter who I adopted when she was 2.5.
Nice.
And then my wife has a daughter who is the exact same age as my niece, who is now my daughter.
Oh, wow.
So
that's crazy.
And then I have a stepson from my wife as well. So we have two 14, about to be 15-year-old girls.
Wow.
And then we have my 22-year-old son, and he's about to have a baby.
Oh, wow. Congrats to him. You're going to be a grandpa.
Yeah, Grand Danny in action. Because all the kids call me Danny. Because I adopted because my daughter was my niece, who I adopted when she was 2.5. So she called me Uncle Danny for like the first month, and then it became Danny. And that just stuck.
Yeah.
And she's always called me Danny. And then when I started dating my wife, her kids started just calling me Danny too, because that's just how it worked.
That's how it was. Yeah.
Everybody just calls me Danny. So
it's pretty close to daddy, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually, when she was little, when she was going to kindergarten, there was those Daddy's Girl shirts. We would change them to Danny's Girl. We would just take a Sharpie and change the D's to N's.
Oh, that is hilarious.
Yeah.
That's great. That was a loaded question, but thank you for sharing with that. That's
no problem.
That's a wild household you got going on, bud.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
That's awesome. Yeah, dude, we're definitely stoked for sure. It's a very man, it's kind of like a surreal feeling when you first are going to go down that path. It's because everything changes. I mean, everyone always says that, and all my buddies that have kids are like, "Oh yeah, your life changes and your priorities change." And I'm like, "Come on, do they really? No way." And then once this happened, it's like they change.
I think kids, once they come, they make you the worst or best version of yourself.
Ooh, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
So some people survive it and become out better people, and some people do not, and they become the worst version of themselves and continuously spiral until they're out of control and can't handle it. So
and I think a lot of it is just the pressure, right? Like some people just can't handle the pressure, and maybe not being selfish. I mean, that's the one thing at least I've noticed. I mean, even though she's not even born yet, we're having a girl, by the way, and it's everything that I'm doing now, whether it's work or food or grocery shopping, I'm always thinking like so far ahead. So I can't imagine, because I'm just such a stickler and, a Jew when it comes to money anyway. So it's like, so now I'm just like thinking 6 months in advance to where, okay, so if I spend like $10 less on my audio equipment or whatever, that's $10 more that goes into her mouth. So
what I learned, so I'm big on words. I don't know if you've watched any of my stuff or
it's great,
consumed any of my shit, but I love words. Words are very important to me.
Yeah.
If I can give you anything about the word selfish, it's don't lose it. So selfish actually means to just focus on your own joy and pleasure. Mm-hmm. And if you don't focus on your own joy and pleasure, then you won't be a joyful dad to be around. The thing you don't want to end up being is self-involved, where you're shutting everybody else out of your world and nothing matters but you and whatever it is you have going on. And there's a big difference in those two things. And I think people spend a lot of time defining their words and their language based on how they feel about those words because of their life experiences. And I think if they can stop doing that and they can get away from it and understand that words are designed for a very specific reason in communication, it's a lot easier to not be offended and a lot easier to function in a group, because you don't have to worry about what word you're saying as long as you're only worried about the specific definition of it.
That's right.
So if I'm like, oh yeah, dude, I'm super selfish. I really, I like what I enjoy and I do my thing. I try not to be self-involved. I try to make sure that everybody's included in my joy.
That's huge.
Right?
Yeah. And Yeah, I love what you said because even I'm guilty of it as well. Even just now, using that word selfish, where I think we all do that a lot, right? Because whether it's past experiences or just, our ignorance of what a definition of a word is, because words can just be thrown around and used so loosely and right. And culture changes words into meaning certain things. And then, down the road, some of those words become offensive, even though they weren't 10 days ago. So it's like, it's one of these weird things where we don't really think too much. And sometimes we just kind of like vomit sentences. And I am guilty of that as well, because I talk a lot about selfishness and trying to think about, her, even though she's not born yet. But I even do that to myself. I tell my wife we have a very good relationship when it comes to doing what we want to do. And I always use anytime we get into like a riff back and forth, I always use the analogy of going down on a plane. What does the stewardess always say? The stewardess always says, put your mask on first before you can help a woman or a child in need. And that is because if you don't take care of yourself, whether that's, for me, I talk a lot about on my podcast about mental health, physical health, and financial freedom, and kind of social media's interaction between all those things. And I think a lot of it has to do with if you're not focusing on yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and you can't take care of your wife or your spouse or your kid, and you kind of have to focus on yourself more because, to your point, you got to not only keep your sanity, but it's also to protect everyone around you. Like I talk a lot about if I'm not physically and mentally well, then if something happens, God forbid, in my household or there's an apocalypse or something like that, I need to have not only the survival skills, but the critical thinking skills, the physicality, the mental stability and emotion to take care of everybody around me, whether that's friends or family. So I think it is important that we take care of ourselves. And, sometimes that word selfish does get misconstrued a little bit. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's all that stuff.
Yeah. And by the way, we are recording. I just go into it.
It's fine, dude. So I do the same thing. Fuck it, let's go.
Yeah, dude. So again, thanks for the time, and I appreciate you being on. And I do love your content. Very educational, very entertaining.
Thank you.
I first originally saw you on TikTok. And I know you have obviously other social handles, but if you can give the viewers a quick little cliff notes on kind of where you got your start, what you're doing now, and the type of content you put out.
Yeah. So we just started the podcast recently. We've been recording the podcast for just about 6 months, and we've just been posting content under the handle Money Supports Happy for about 4 months. Very cool. I run a company called Burden Media. We are a content creation company. We help small businesses create content. It's called Burden Media because creating content is a fucking burden if you run a business. Yeah. So we created a business that helps people create content so they don't have to worry about it. So we're not necessarily the influencers. We don't do the influencer style content. We do content for you and your brand. So it's very much true to you and what you're doing and how you're doing it. That's awesome. We decided we were getting a lot of flack because we tell businesses, depending on what your business is and depending on what you do for a business, you don't need millions of followers. You need 500 great followers. You need 2,000 amazing followers. You need followers when you're a small business that are going to recommend your business to other people. They're going to see you. They're going to see what you do. They're going to call you up, ask you for your service or product. They're going to love it, and then they're going to tell everybody else about it. So the goal for us is to showcase the quality people behind a brand. It's quality people provide a quality service and product. So we keep telling people there's multiple ways that you can go viral on the internet, right? You can be a complete douchebag and prank people and hurt people and do it from a very scary place. And it's fun for you. And as long as it's fun for them, that's great. You can do that thing. And as long as everybody involved is having fun, great. And then there's, you can be what we profoundly call a thought leader, where boy or girl, you can take your clothes off and look really hot and good for you. You look great and you should model and do your thing. And that's awesome. That's, there's nothing wrong with being a model on social media. It's no different than being a model in a magazine. Right. And then there's people that are thought leaders. There's people that are the best at what they do, and they come out and they know more about a topic than other people, and they share that information. whether it be something that they created themselves, or it's something that they've been doing for a long time, or it's something that they believe will help other people. So I got a lot of flack for telling people they didn't need a ton of followers, and including my wife would be like, well, you don't go viral. How come you don't go viral? And I was like, because I don't do content like that. Like that's not the type of content I want to do. I don't want to do any of those types of things on the internet at this point in time. And then I've always enjoyed talking to people. I've always enjoyed meeting people and having conversations. I'm obsessed with achievement, not my own, but other people's. I just obsess over how people do things and what their process is and what they do. So I was like, okay. And then I got sick of hearing people tell other people that money wouldn't buy their happiness. No, it won't make you happy if you don't have it, but it sure as shit will support you in having less stress and getting the things that you want in life. Nothing that you want doesn't cost money. You have to have money to support anything that you want to do as far as happiness is concerned. So I came up with the phrase money supports happy, because it may not make you happy, but it sure as shit supports it.
Yeah.
So we started doing this podcast, and me talking to people and me having conversations with people having a practical understanding of success, meaning success is subjective. It's you define it for yourself. Whether you make $50,000 a year or $50 million a year, it doesn't matter as long as you are fulfilled. So I started having these conversations with people, and through those conversations, I'm a very loud, opinionated human being. So that stuff tends to hit and go viral. Sure. And then I'm a guy that I have very thick skin. You're hard pressed to offend me. The only people that offend me are the people that I care about. And I only get offended because my feelings are hurt. You know, I learned a really good lesson after I adopted my daughter, and I taught other people it through a program I created, but you are only angry when you're hurt. So if you can start to recognize that you're only angry when your feelings are hurt, you don't actually have to be as angry anymore. You can look at the situation and go, oh, I'm mad. Why am I mad? I'm mad because this person hurt my feelings. How did they hurt my feelings? They hurt my feelings by doing this or that or whatever they did, even if it's my kid, right? When I get mad at my kid, I'm mad because my feelings are hurt. I'm not mad because I want to be angry. I'm mad because I asked them not to do something, or they scared me in some way that made me angry. So my feelings are hurt. So I get triggered to be angry in that scenario. So if I can avoid triggering myself to be angry, and I can focus on the hurt, then I can explain to you, hey man, you hurt my feelings. You know, this is why I'm upset. So now I don't get mad. So when people are in the comments just hating and trashing and trolling, I just troll right back because I think it's fucking funny.
Yeah.
Just like, really? You think that? Like, that's what you got from this video? That's your thought? All right, we're going to talk about this. How is that your thought from the 2 minutes you just watched? Right?
Yeah,
so
people are so quick to have an opinion and, you know, to say something. I've even had people in the comments that don't even watch a full video and will comment. And then I'm like, did you watch to the end? Because I rectified that. Like, you know, that's what I love about podcasting is, you know, it's so interesting when you post these little clips, and, you know, that's what people like, right? Because their attention span's less than 7 seconds. So they love the little digestible clips. But, you know, I have people that literally say, well, I don't agree with that. You know, I think it's this. And I'm like, well, you should actually listen to the full 2-hour podcast, because we openly discuss and we go back and forth, and we do talk about that. So you made a good point, but don't make a judgment based off this clip. Like, that's why I put the call to the action at the end. Watch the full episode on my channel. Like, so but you know, people just don't want to do that. They don't want to watch or listen to 2 hours. They like to see that 7 to 30 seconds and make a quick judgment, and then just say something completely mean because it's not face to face. That's just how people are.
Well, they get strong, and again, I'm hard pressed to get hurt because I only value your opinion as much as I value you.
Right.
So if you're not somebody of importance in my life, it really doesn't matter what you think of me because you don't know me. And if you don't know me well enough to know what I have going on in my world or how I do what I do, and you're judging it off 2 minutes, Man, I'm 43 years old. There's a lot of fucking minutes in 43 years that you don't know about.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's not a lot I can do for you if you want to judge my entire existence on 2 minutes. Go
Right.
for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's there for. Like, I want you to feel something. I want you to have a thought. Like, if I trigger you to have a thought, I did my job.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter to me if it's negative or positive, really.
Yeah, and I think a lot of negative thoughts and negative feelings and all that stuff. I mean, a lot of that stuff is good, right? Because it gives people, as long as you have critical thinking skills, it gives people the opportunity to debate, go back and forth. And I mean, some of my best ideas and some of my best conversations started with disagreements.
Right.
Because through disagreements, you both, hopefully, again, if you're smart enough to use critical thinking, you both can kind of figure out a middle ground and discuss an interesting topic or a crazy topic that maybe you don't normally discuss. But yeah, two people just talking about things and disagreeing and negative thoughts that spark good conversations, I think. So
well, that's one of the videos that I have on Instagram that is slow burning. And it has like 80,000 views now, but it took like 3 months for it to get there. It's just a weird video.
Classic Instagram.
It's a classic Instagram situation, but it's fine. Yeah. But it's about compromise, and I hate the word compromise. I refuse to compromise. And people get mad at me because they're like, well, compromise is important. It matters, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, compromise is not important. Compromise means that you're only coming to a solution through concessions, meaning you're giving something up. I like the word resolution. If you matter to me, and we want to solve a problem, whether it's business or personal life, we need to come to a resolution. Otherwise, there is going to be resentment. If it's a client, they're going to be resentful that I didn't listen to their full idea or their full thought. They're going to be resentful that they're paying me for something that they don't believe in or they don't think is working the way that they want it to work or that they don't understand. So it's my job to help them understand it and come to a resolution. But if I just say, oh, you're right, I'm wrong, I'll give in and do it your way, I'm giving up some of the quality of what I do in my work. And it's the same with a relationship. If me and my wife or even me and my daughter are having a disagreement and I make my daughter compromise every time I have a disagreement with her, she's going to have resentment towards me. She's not going to come to me with problems. She's not even going to learn how to have a proper discussion or conversation about the shit that's going on in her life with the people in her life besides me. So for me, compromise is such a huge issue that people are just brushing it off like, oh, compromise, resolution, same thing. You have to give something up to come to a resolution. You might have to give something up, but it has to be something that you're okay giving up. And that's the difference.
And
right?
you probably
that's
shouldn't do it all the time.
No.
Right, if you are going to do it at all.
Right.
And where do you think that stems from? Like because obviously as a species, we weren't always like that. Do you think just as we evolve, we get more and more soft? And is it we're listening to outside influences and we think we need to do that type of stuff and compromise? Like where do you think that stems from?
I think it stems from a part of mentality where, one, we want to be people pleasers. Two, we're told as kids, we're told literally as children that we have to give some stuff up. Like, and you have to find a balance in that, right? Like I look at my daughter and say, hey, you have to share. Sharing is different than compromising. Or, hey, you can't have the whole box of cookies. You can have 2, right? Or you can have 3, whatever it is, but you can't have all 100 cookies that are in there. There are consequences to going overboard, right? So I think, again, it comes down to people are defining words based on how they feel about them instead of what they actually are. And if you're taught to feel that compromise is a good thing, that, oh, if a relationship's going to work, you have to compromise. What a shitty way to start your relationship. Right. Like, what a terrible way to walk into a relationship and be like, oh, I just have to give everything up for this person. And, like back in the 50s, that was women's lives before the 50s, right? Women have had to compromise almost their entire existence.
Everything.
Up until recently. And even still now, there are many of them that have to compromise. And I don't have to specifically compromise in my life as much because I get that I have privilege. I get that I was raised in a loving family. I get that I don't have to be fearful when I walk down the street or of bad things happening to me or something that's going to occur. But it stems from this idea that somebody else is in power, and to please that power, you have to compromise your beliefs or your things that matter to you so that they will give you what you want. If you're compromising to get what you want, you're not really getting what you want because you have to give up a piece of yourself. So I think it stems from that whole mindset and mentality of, I don't want to argue, I don't want to fight, I don't want to go into war. We'll just give something up that is enough for them to go away. Most people compromise when they want somebody to go away.
Yeah, because that's kind of our fear, right? Is conflict,
right?
Like that's what it boils down to. Is we don't want to go down that path, maybe because it's going to take 40 minutes of our time or 2 hours of our time to argue or to disagree and come to that resolution. And it's going to be challenging and tough, and it's going to be an uphill battle, and we might get a little dirty along the way, but people are just scared of that. And again, I like what you said about getting soft. I mean, that makes a lot of sense because you see it happening. I mean, it's getting worse and worse with a lot of different topics. I mean, this is a 10-hour podcast if we go into everything that's making us soft, but that makes a lot of sense now that you say that.
So I don't know you from Adam. This is the first time I've ever even spoken to you. Your choice of words is very interesting to me.
Oh,
we're talking about a disagreement, and we're talking about resolution and compromise, and you immediately go to argue for hours or disagree for hours.
Yeah.
See, I look at it and I think, how do I have a discussion? How do I solve the issue through words?
Yeah.
Right. So how do I discuss it, or how do I understand your point of view versus how do I argue with you, or how do I disagree with you? I'm not here to disagree with anybody. If you disagree with me, that's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. And then I have to evaluate the importance of you in my life. A disagreement with my wife is much different than a disagreement with you. I don't know you.
That's true.
So if you and I disagree on something, I have to evaluate, okay, he thinks compromise, like you don't, but for example, he thinks compromise is the most important thing. I think it's not.
Right.
How important is it for me to convince you that compromise is not the best way?
Zero.
It's not that important to me.
Yeah.
But with my wife, it's imperative because I never want her to feel resentment. I never want her to feel like she is in a place where she's giving up something because she feels like she has to for me. That's a terrible place to be, especially in a loving relationship.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a great point. And yet I'm not even sure why I use, those words. It definitely stems from my childhood. I come from a family of divorce. So to me, it was only, if you disagree with something, it led to an argument. But, I guess I grew up as looking at that disagreement and arguing or, whatever you want to call it, as a good thing. Because, it might take 5 to 10 years, but eventually now you look at like my parents and they're both been divorced for 20-something years. My dad's remarried. He's happy. My mom's on her own. She's happy. And, again, they just had to disagree a lot and eventually they cut ways. So, but I think if they did in fact sit down and have conversations and figure out ways to come to that resolution, would they have had a better marriage? Possibly. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll never know. And I think a lot of people out there can take a look at their lives and say, I can kind of relate with that a little bit because, I mean, me personally, I've been in relationships prior to my wife that I definitely did not, by any means, have conversations with my previous girlfriends to where I just did what I wanted to do. And if they told me to do something, I said no. And there was no sit-down conversation by any means. And I think as we get older, we realize that there are certain people that you want to have those conversations with. And, hopefully those relationships get stronger over time.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? We've all been there. And I think that's why I think it's so important to have conversations like this on TikTok and have them where the young people are.
That's right.
Because, man, if I had people talking like this and I had access to it when I was in my 20s and I actually listened and believed in it,
for sure,
it would have made my life a hell of a lot easier.
For sure.
I got in my own way a hell of a lot when I was in my 20s and in my teens, you know?
Yeah, you and me both, dude. Yeah, it was a gnarly time for me because they separated when I was in my teens and then got divorced when I was 15. So of course, for any 15-year-old boy, that's a crazy time as it is. You sprinkle in some animosity in the family and 2 Christmases and 2 birthdays and 2 this and 2 that and sharing custody every other weekend and changing schools. You factor that in. I definitely had a very rebellious 18 to 26 was my age bracket. But again, I always look back now and I say, well, of course I was a young boy, I was impressionable, and I was hanging around the wrong crowd, and all that is definitely a factor. But to your point, if we had outside influences, where my dad and my mom did, I think, the best job that they could in that specific situation, because it's new to everybody. I mean, every situation we get into, whether it's a divorce or a bad relationship or a shitty time at work, or you have a bad boss or we're only trying to do the best we can. I mean, you can listen to advice and listen to Dr. Phil and whoever motivates you.
Right. Yeah, whoever you decide
is the best. But we're all just trying to do what we can. As I got older, I realized that everyone is just trying to get through this thing as best we can and educate ourselves the best possible. But it's more funny when you realize the history of like our species. Like, I'm big into that. And I talk a lot about that on my podcast, to where, doctors back in the day used to prescribe cigarettes because they thought it was a good idea. So now you look at everything to where I think we're all just trying to get through this and figure it out. And the only way we can all get better is through conversation. And that's what is so fascinating to me about podcasting. When I started doing it 2-3 years ago, is I've learned not only so much, like just in this conversation, but the 200 something episodes that I've done. I always try to have people on to discuss topics that I'm passionate about, or that I'm curious about, or that I don't know about, because I've learned not only so much through them, but I become more objective myself and more open-minded myself. And we talked a little bit earlier when you first came on, where words matter, and I didn't know a lot of words and I didn't know a lot of information prior to starting this podcast. And through conversation and through discussing and even disagreeing at sometimes, but through those conversations, I learned a ton. And if you don't want to record it and put it out to the universe, you should at least have these sit-down conversations with your family and friends, because it is very beneficial, for sure.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you would think that I was a good student by the way I talk about words, and I graduated high school with like an 8th grade reading level. I basically snuck out of high school like through the back door.
That's impressive.
And I didn't really, because I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew how I wanted to get there. And I knew that at a very young age, I knew how to work systems and how things were supposed to work. So I was like, oh, okay, you just need this from me. Got it. I can do that. And reading was embarrassing for me because I have ADHD, which I didn't know about until I was in my 20s. I'm bipolar, which I didn't know about until I was in my 20s. Wow. So those are all things that played factors in my life as a kid. And then I was bullied a lot. And then I moved schools in 8th grade. So I went from public school to a Catholic school in 8th grade.
That's a switch.
So my first 7, and I was basically an atheist as a kid, and my parents knew it, but they sent me to a Catholic school anyways. So I went there, and it was just fucking traumatizing. And then from 8th grade into high school, I switched to another school that was out of town where I didn't know anybody. So the first year and a half of high school, I was bullied almost every day, even though I played sports and I wasn't a bad athlete. Like, I was good. Like, I was a starting athlete, but because I was in a new town, it was very tough on me. But the difference is I would go home and I was very much loved. I was loved very much by my parents, and they were very supportive of letting me know that whatever I do is good by them.
That's huge.
And my parents made it very important for me to understand that effort mattered, not grades. My mom was very big on what are the comments that your teachers are saying about you, not what are your grades. So I was like, oh, so I'll just make my teachers like me, and then I'm fine, right? So I used this, and the schoolwork was hard for me. I didn't get it. It was very hard for me to comprehend and learn the way that they wanted me to learn. So in my 20s, when I figured out how I learn, then I was just like, it was like fireworks going off every time I learned something. It was like, oh, this is how I learn. Oh, I get this. I can do this. I can understand this. This is exciting to learn shit now because I can learn my way. Right. Yeah. So words became very important to me when I found out that I was bipolar because I was triggered a lot. So I don't know how much you know about bipolar, but you kind of walk through life getting triggered by just about everything. And it either pisses you off or gets you super excited. There's no like level
gray area
playing field. It's either like, this is the best fucking thing ever, or this is the worst thing ever. I'm going to kill everybody. Like you just get like really aggressively angry or you get really aggressively excited. Wow. And then ADHD is an impulse problem. It's not really as much about being distracted as much as it's about impulsivity. So a lot of people talk about ADD and they're like, oh, that just means you can't pay attention. No, it doesn't mean I can't pay attention. It means I have these ideas and these thoughts that happen so fast that I don't give them time to finish being a thought. I just start doing whatever it was that I thought would be fun or exciting, which is where it can get you can get yourself in a lot of fucking trouble because, try going gambling with ADD. It's a fucking mess. You're like, oh, I can do that. I'll just bet. Okay, I got a system now. I'll just do this. You just keep piling stuff on because with ADHD, it's more about figuring it out and executing it than it is about being distracted by something. You can get bored really easy. You can be like, oh, this is stupid. This is boring. I don't want to do it. Right. But when you want to do something, you hyper fixate on it until you fully understand it, and then you walk away from it. You're like, yeah, no, I got it. I figured that out. I can, like, whether it's a game on your phone, a puzzle, a model, Legos, whatever it is that you decide that you're going to fixate on, you just go fixate on it until you get it. And then you go, oh, I get it. Okay, I'm good. I'm going to move on from this.
That's right. It's almost like you have too many tabs open.
Right. So that's when words, for me, because they put me on medication that I didn't like. They didn't like the way I felt on it because I didn't feel, it probably was good for me, but I didn't like the way it made me feel because I didn't feel like me. And not feeling like me was a struggle. Yeah. So that's when I started looking at my world and going, okay, how can I fix this? Yeah. And that's when I created a program called the Evolutions Program and started teaching other people because my mom's a therapist. Okay. So I did basically a quote unquote life coaching class that I ran by her and through her because she was a licensed clinical therapist. Yeah. And I was like, what do you think of this? Like, what do you think if I lived like this? She's like, this is great. She's like, you came up with this? I was like, well, yeah, I used different things to kind of put it all together, and then I looked at how I achieve stuff, and these are the five habits that I use on a regular basis to get what I want. I just kind of put it into words and figured it out, and then this is how I can use words to understand what's going on in my world rather than using how I feel. I can look at what's really happening. And then if I can do that, then my brain likes words enough that my ADHD kicks in and goes, wait, what's that word mean? Why is that? Why are they using that word? Okay, so if they're using that word for this reason, it doesn't mean what I think it means. So they're not trying to be hurtful. So I don't have to be mad. So now I can just be okay and we can have a conversation.
So really about just dissecting each individual word. Not just to have a conversation, but also, for your sanity, to control your illness, right?
Right.
And obviously you've seen massive benefits of doing that, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And when I share it with people and I discuss it with people, and even in my program, I've helped people like reach awesome goals because I'm like, well, stop looking at it so for me, there's perception and there's perspective, right? Perception is how we see the world based on how we feel about it. Perspective is the reality of what's actually happening. So if we can have some self-awareness and stop worrying about what we're feeling and start looking at what's really actually happening, we can literally become much more effective.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're not spending our time worried about our emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in the last decade, I would say it's heightened, humanity. Yeah. In fact, I think it was Ricky Gervais, who's fantastic, But he
Yep.
he said something. I think I saw it on TikTok or Twitter or something, and it just came to me as you were talking. But he said something along the lines of, I don't want to butcher his joke, but he said something along the lines of saying that you're offended by a joke is no different than you telling me that your leg hurts, because that's a you problem. You know, you're offended by the joke. Yeah, your leg hurts, but because your leg hurts, that doesn't affect me in any way. Just like you're offended by my joke, that doesn't affect me in any way. You know, I'm not going to change my joke based off your feelings. The joke is the joke, and you need to control how you react to that joke or that feeling. And I think that's very true. And I think sometimes we forget, not only when we have conversations, but you know, like we were talking about earlier, when we watch videos on social media, we look at that video and we get offended by it. But that person on the video, like if you did something and I watched it and I didn't like it, you don't know me. I'm watching the video and I'm getting offended by it. That's not your problem as the person who posted it. That's my problem. I'm getting offended by it. And we need to kind of, like you did, sit back and just kind of look at those words and see how, whether it triggers me or how I react to it, like what's the problem, and really dissect it. Because I've realized that through conversation and through really taking my time and talking with people, whether it's on camera or off camera, FaceTiming more, not messaging so much anymore. But even the conversations I have via FaceTime, I could have those same conversations in a text message and I would translate it completely differently. Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's how we consume content. That's not good for us. You know, that's I've strongly believed. I even did a TikTok on this a few months ago, where I think social media eventually should get to the point to where we can only comment on someone's page if it's a video, and then they can only comment back. Because think about it, it's almost like, I mean, if you're driving and you're stuck in traffic and some dude cuts you off, you curse at him like you've never cursed before. You've said words that have never exited your mouth before. But if he was right in front of you, you would never say those words. You would never react that way typically, right? Like, but because we're stuck in that glass box of our vehicle, we feel safe. And that's how people feel, I think, on social media, is they're safe in their little message box. You know, they're safe in that comment section. But if it was like a video, I don't think anybody would post negative comments, because they don't want that repercussion of having that face-to-face interaction. You know what I mean? Well,
when you get a negative comment, do you ever go to the page of the person that sent you the negative comment?
Depends on the level of the comment. Sometimes, yeah. It's because it's hilarious.
I do it for both.
Yeah.
I do it for both. And I think it's funny when people comment something that they think is super profound, right? And then I'll go to their page and it'll be private and they'll have like 4 followers.
Yeah.
And they'll be following like 10 people. And I'll just be like, wait, what? Is this real? Like, is this actually what you're doing?
And it's sometimes like, if it's not that, it's the other extreme, which is whether they have followers or not, it's a public profile and their page is so controversial. You know, it's like you're commenting on me about parental advice, but I go to your page and it's like racist Nazi behavior on your page. Yeah. It's like, come on, man. Like, you're being offensive. I'm not the one being offensive. Yeah. But it's weird. People are weird, man. We just like it's weird that we like conflict one-sided. Yeah. You know, like a lot of us just enjoy watching a car accident, but we never want to be in one. You know what I mean? Like, we're just so fascinated with destruction, but we don't like to confront it ourselves. We don't like to be a part of it ourselves. It's very interesting.
It is interesting to me too. It's interesting to me the things that people focus on. And I always notice when people focus more on the negative than the positive in things. And I get caught up doing it too. Like, I'm not a perfect person. Like, I never want anybody to think that like I'm over here going, well, I'm perfect and I do it this way and you should do it this way too. Yeah. That's not it. Like, I am very flawed. I am not perfect at life. I have some answers that have worked for me, and I don't always follow my own fucking advice, honestly. Yeah. Like, and I come up short. And when I come up short, I do my best to look at people and be like, dude, I just came up real short. That's my bad. That's totally on me. Like, I shouldn't have done that to you. That was my fault. Right? But it's this idea of looking at people and understanding that they're human too. But I can learn a lot about what type of human you are by the shit you're interested in. It's so funny to me when people, like, even like on social media, right? We all know what type of person you are when we see your reels. Like, if you just borrow somebody's phone for 2 seconds and be like, yo, let me see your reel feed.
Yeah.
Like, just open up your phone, close all your apps, open up your reel feed on Instagram or TikTok or any one of them, and just look at the reels that pop up in somebody's feed. You'll know what type of person they are.
Yeah.
Like, right there, you'll just be like, oh, these are the things you're watching?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
right?
So true. Yeah, your For You page is definitely for you. It's
definitely for you. So I gave this advice to. So I'm in a group on Facebook called Dads in Business. It's a really cool group that this guy Brian Waldale started here in Connecticut.
Oh, nice.
And they asked me to come speak about living an authentic life on social media. And one of the things I told them to do for their teenage daughters, because a lot of them allowed them on social media, and I don't think a lot of teenagers belong on social media. I don't think any of them do. Social media is basically like dropping your kid off at a bar and hoping for the best. So I told them, if you've already allowed your kids on social media, what you want to do is you want to send them as many positive, influential reels as you can. And when they open them, it'll change their For You page to all the stuff you're sending them, because they're spending time watching those videos. So if you can send them more positive stuff than they can consume negative stuff, you win the algorithm. It's just AI. It can be tricked. So send your kids as much positive reels and as much fun stuff that you want them to see as you possibly can, and it will negate all the stuff that their friends are sometimes sending them or what they're doing.
That's huge.
Like,
yeah,
just feed it.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of, and I mean, I think that practice could be applied to us. You know, like I did a really interesting experiment with my buddy. It was motivated by Ari Shafir, who's a comedian, and he did. Yeah, you're familiar. Yeah, he did like this thing where he got off, you know, his smartphone. He went to a flip phone, and then when he got back to his smartphone, he liked nothing but puppy videos for 30 days. Puppy videos on Facebook, Instagram, puppy this, puppy that, and his entire feed was just nothing but cute puppies.
Yeah.
And that, again, can be true to all of us, to where we always want to blame social media. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of negatives with social media. He's not the good guy, social media, but he's definitely not the bad guy either. No. You know, we always like to point him as like the Russia of our phone. Like, we need to just relax and just understand that we're provoking a little bit about what's in your feed. So I love the idea of sending your kids positive reinforcement, because I think we need to send that to ourselves. Like, send that to your friends as well. You know, I send crazy stuff to my wife, like really funny stuff, because now, of course, her For You page is all like pregnancy stuff. Yep. But occasionally, like, because I'm such a nerd, I'll send her like, you know, things about space or the galaxy, or like just like kind of out of the world thinking, because I want her to be on my crazy weird nerd level as well. Yeah. And she does the same thing for me. She kind of humbles me a little bit by sending me pregnancy stuff and puppy stuff, because that is not on my feed. So my feed's very strange, but I think that's good. I think it's good that you have those positive, weird, funny things that you're sharing back and forth with friends and family, because if you follow everyone else's algorithm, it's usually like, again, the car accidents. They like the weird, crazy, negative stuff, and then that consumes you. You know, if you're consuming a lot of content, which I try to post and ghost, that's usually a motto I try to do. Easier said than done, of course, especially if you got like a hot video, because you want to get engaged with the community a little bit. But if you're not posting and ghosting, you're spending probably 8 hours a day on social, and that's being very conservative, right? So if you're consuming 8 hours of negative shit, it's going to affect your mental health, and it's going to affect your physical life and the people around you as well, no?
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's so important to remember that your opinion is only as valuable as you are to me. That doesn't mean you don't have value in the world. It just means you don't have value in my world. So I'm going to read your comments. I'm going to do my best to respond in kind, whether you're being positive or negative. If you're being negative, I'm not going to be mean for the sake of being mean, but I am not going to take shit. Like, you're talking about a kid that was, like, my childhood trauma is still there. I was bullied. Yeah. And if a bunch of strangers want to bully me on the internet and you think I'm going to sit back and just be like, oh, shucks, you're probably right, I'm fat and stupid, like that's not really going to happen.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to dive in. I'm going to look at your stuff and I'm going to look at your feed and I'm going to find things that you have going on and I'm going to go, oh, this is you. Okay, I get you now.
Yeah.
This is what you're doing. So this is your trauma and this is why you were triggered, and that's okay. You're allowed to be triggered by me. And if you need a hug, I can give you my address and you can come get one. But but like I'm not going to sit here and allow negativity to control me. Your negativity can't control me because I don't love you like that.
That's right. Yeah, so you can only control what you can control, right? I mean,
yeah.
You can't really control what people say about you. It's really how you can just react to those things. And you can either react positively or negatively to it. And I mean, do you feel like if you do get bullied or if you do something shouts out in the comment section, like how do you typically like to deal with that? Do you deal with that as going to their page and if they're, short and scrawny with freckles, do you bash them right back?
Oh, hell no.
Or are you
no, I don't go and attack them as a person. I look at their thoughts and then I use their feed to figure out why they commented what they commented. And then I'll respond to the comment. I'll respond to what you're saying. So if you say, like I had comments where I told a story about how I made my daughter run after a game because she didn't put in the effort. So, and we had a standing deal that if you don't put in the effort now, you'll put in the effort later. That's called accountability.
Yeah.
So if you're in the game and you don't put in the effort that you chose to be in this game and you chose to be part of this team and you didn't work hard enough, that doesn't mean you get out of the work. It just means that you have to do it after. And the lesson is do it right the first time and you won't have to do it longer. Right? Just like if you're doing the dishes,
lesson.
if you're right.
Yeah.
If I tell my daughter to do the dishes and she doesn't do them right, am I supposed to just do them for her? Or am I to call her back and make her do them correctly? I call her back and make them do them correctly. And it's not my problem that you wanted to watch your show or you wanted to talk to your friend or if you had done it right the first time, you wouldn't be back in here doing it again. That's the lesson, right? And that's taught through sports in my world because I was an athlete. So I had people commenting like, oh, well, this guy should take his own advice. He should run. Or, oh, imagine being told you're not putting in effort by this guy. And it's like, oh, so you're coming on here and fat shaming me because you don't understand the lesson. You're talking about my personal health, which you know nothing about. Like you know nothing about my life. And I don't have a physical ailment that prevents me from losing more weight. I like food a lot and I don't give a shit that affects me from not losing weight. But that doesn't mean I don't work out, and that doesn't mean that I go to the gym 3 times a week. I have a trainer. I'm in pretty good shape. Like I'm not like, could I stand to lose weight? Absolutely. Could I stand to be in better health? Absolutely. But that's not the point of my story. The point of my story is I'm teaching my kid a lesson, and I was talking to a Major League Baseball Hall of Fame first baseman when we were having the conversation. We were talking about coaching the effort. Right? I've built a business on my own. I've lived in New York and LA. I've made movies that have sold worldwide. I have a movie coming out this month, February, that is going to be released worldwide that I made 2 summers ago. I don't need you to tell me what my effort is. Like it's not, it doesn't affect me. And again, me talking about it isn't you affecting me. Me talking about it is telling all the other people that are listening that want to understand it that person doesn't hold the value that they think they hold in my life. They're not renting space in my head. They're just creating more positive conversations for me to have with guys like you that have a following, that don't know who I am, that will listen and learn that they don't have to hold every single thing every person says to them, about them, or around them personally, because it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
It only matters as much as they matter.
That's right. And I mean, they try to create matter in their life by shaming people or bashing people. And, and that happens a lot. And it's all new, right? With social media. I mean, the last 20 years, really, it's starting to escalate. But, we're starting to realize that I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. I think people just inherently are mean, and angry at whatever, angry at gas prices or Biden or Trump or Russia or whatever you're angry at. It's irrelevant, because when you start releasing that anger onto other fellow humans, that's when it becomes a problem. And a lot of people like to do that in the comments. And it's unfortunate. But as long as we can, like you're doing, kind of spread the knowledge of looking at that person, why are they like that, and not going back and bullying them, but just kind of understanding it, soaking it in, taking your time, and just kind of understanding what's happening. Because a lot of us are just quick to jump right back at that person, and that's how conflict starts, and there is no resolution to it. But yeah, you don't want to lay down for sure, and I respect that of you, because a lot of people ask me. I just had another creator on my show a few weeks ago, Heather Parody. Shout out Heather Parody. She has a really great podcast, and she talks a lot about this. But we were kind of going in a debate, a very comfortable debate, but we were talking a lot about celebrities, because she has a podcast where she'll pick apart each celebrity. And we were talking like Kevin Hart and the Oscars, somehow that came up, and Will Smith and all these folks. And then we ended up talking about how Kevin Hart decided not to go back on a tweet that he did like 10 years ago. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
But the reason he got pulled away from hosting the Oscars, he apologized and then he refused not to do it. And there's so many other celebrities and other creators, and including her herself, she had to kind of pull back on some things and delete things. And she asked me if I would ever delete any podcast. And I go, no, never. I would never delete a podcast, a tweet, a post. If I said it, I meant to say it. Whether it was right or wrong is irrelevant, because I've done a lot of wrong things and I'm going to do a lot more wrong things. And me eradicating what I did in the past doesn't change the fact of what I said. So, like, just because I didn't offend the millions of people that saw it, I still said it. And I might have offended one person back in the day. And that person is still going to walk around knowing that I offended them. So me erasing it off the internet doesn't erase it from time. So it's almost better to me anyway, and this is subjective, of course, but it's better to me that I just leave it out there, because I look back on the podcast that I originally did and all the posts that I did, and it was stupid, and I was argumentative, and I didn't listen to my guests, and I learned so much on episode 1 versus now I'm almost at 200, and I think it's cool that I could look back and understand my growth. I don't want to erase it just because it was bad quality or poor taste. I find that to be irresponsible, because that's how we all grow. I mean, imagine if we erased everything and every single book, we got rid of slavery. And, we got rid of the fact of how we treated women, like you said, back in the 50s. What if we just erased all those books and burned them? 100 years from now, we won't know what African Americans and women and what they had to power through and get to be successful. You don't want to erase all that, because it's part of history. Yeah, it might suck, but look at where we are and look at the growth of these humans and different people. So, I mean, that's just how I feel. I mean, how do you feel about that topic?
I feel that failure is our best teacher. And if you're going to fail, which everybody does, if you don't fail, then you've never tried anything new.
Right.
So
True.
Looking at where you are now versus where you were, if somebody's offended by something I did 10 years ago, what I did 10 years ago made me the person I am today. And if I'm if I'm saying something different now than what I was saying 10 years ago, that means I've had growth. It means I came from somewhere. And me leaving it up from 10 years ago, or hearing what I said or knowing what I said on a podcast from before, if I've changed my opinion on that thing, then it's really important that you know that I changed my opinion and you ask me why I changed my opinion. Why is this now my new belief? Why is this, what happened that you went from believing this thing that now you believe this thing? Because that might help somebody else on their journey find it faster.
That's right.
Whereas if I delete all that stuff and I get rid of it and it's now voided from existence and nobody knows how I got to the person I am today, which I'm a very different person at 43 than I was at 23,
right,
then they wouldn't know that journey. I guarantee you the people that knew me in New York when I was 23, looking at me talk right now are like, that's a lot of the same Danny, but man, he's evolved into a better version of himself.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Like, you're always going to be the person that you are at the core, right? Like, I'm always going to be an asshole. That's just who I am.
Right.
It's just that's my makeup. That's my design.
Yeah.
But I'm much more effective at it now. Like, I don't go around looking for battles. I don't look for fights. I don't look for arguments.
Yeah.
Whereas in my 20s, I might have done that. But I don't do that anymore. And we've been talking about this kind of in a loop and kind of about the same stuff. But I don't look at people that make comments or want me to delete something or are offended by something. I don't look at them as angry or mad. I look at them as hurt. Because you can't be angry if you're not hurt.
Yeah.
So if you're angry at me for something, that means that something in your trauma triggered you to be that way. So if you say something really mean to me and I go, oh, that triggered you, and you go, I'm not triggered, I'm just saying that you ... I'm like, cool. That just means you're triggered. Like, you're angry. I'm not angry. You don't know. Like, you're right. I don't. I'm just reading it in text form. So you're right. I only can read it the way that I assume that you're saying it. And that's me putting that on you. And I don't know what else to do with it unless you add some sort of emoji or change your words. Because the words you're using, this is what they mean to me.
Yeah.
This is what I'm getting from that.
Yeah.
But I don't. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, and it's kind of what we were talking about before, right? Like, you mentioned the conversations and the feelings of your wife is more important than a stranger. And usually, I mean, I don't know if you could relate with this, but I don't get angry at my wife. At least I haven't in quite some time. But
yeah, right. I wish.
Well, let's put it this way. I get angry less at my wife than I do strangers. To your point earlier, right? Because again, it's I care more about fixing our relationship than other people. So I love what you said about how when a stranger is angry at you and they refuse to say that they're angry, it's because they're hurt. It is. Right. Something's going on, either what I said or what's going on in their personal life. And I think that's why empathy is such a huge part of what we're talking about. Because, when you are talking to a stranger, or whether it's in the comment section or whether it's for, face to face, I think it's important that you understand where they're coming from as well. Because I've been stuck in some very wicked situations to where I'll be having a conversation with somebody in person and they start getting a little tense and the conversation gets elevated, and I don't know why. It just sprung out of nowhere. I didn't say anything to trigger it. Turns out, though, something happened in their life. Their girlfriend broke up with them, their family member died, and I didn't know about that prior to our conversation. So I triggered something in them, not intentionally, of course, but they took it the wrong way and they got angry. So I think it's important that we also understand that if you see someone getting angry, they might be hurt at something you said, but they also might be hurt at something that has nothing to fucking do with you. And that's why we can't be so quick to be triggered ourselves. We have to really just sit back and understand what's happening in the conversation. Yeah,
that's the work, right? There's that old golden nugget that everybody loves that another one I can't fucking stand, but treat people the way you want to be treated. I fucking hate that phrase. Yeah, and the reason I hate it is because you don't want to be treated the way I want to be treated. Mm-mm. You want to be treated the way you want to be treated. So treat people the way they want to be treated. Right? Yeah. That's the real thing that needs to happen. Yeah. And that's why I laugh when you say, "Oh, I don't get angry at my wife." I think I get more angry at my wife than any other person on earth most days, because she is magically capable of hurting my feelings and not giving a shit. And that's why I love her so much. Yeah, but that's why I love her so much, because she challenges me, and she challenges me unapologetically. Yeah. And I will have to do multiple versions of myself, and sometimes that includes anger, for her to even start engaging, because of her own trauma and her own life and things that went on with her. And that's me going, "Oh, you can't have me be calm right now. You want to yell and swear at each other. Okay, let's go. Yeah. Let's get it." Yeah. And then I'll hug her and laugh at her when I'm done and be like, "Is that what you wanted? We're good now?" Yeah. She's like, "Get away from me. You're an idiot." I'm like, and she'll be laughing about it. And I'll be like, yeah, well, you're the one that wanted to be yelled at, not me. That's not how I would solve this issue. But you want to yell at each other and swear at each other? Let's go. Let's get it.
That's so funny.
It's for me, it's really, truly understanding what that other person wants out of the relationship, right? Yeah. It's one of those. So what to you? Let me ask you a question. What's the most important thing in a healthy relationship?
Ooh, talk about a loaded question. I don't know. I mean, I would say focusing on ourselves first. I mentioned it earlier, to where, like, a healthy relationship to me is I need to do what makes me happy, and I need to figure out what's going on in my life and take care of myself first. And I hope my wife does the same with her. You know, as much as I
So-
want to make her happy, I feel like I need to make myself happy first.
So you're the most important thing in the world. The
I
most
think
important
so.
thing in a healthy relationship is the other person,
Mm,
right? The most important thing in the world is yourself.
right.
If I can't take care of me, then
That's
I
right.
can't take care of anybody.
That's right.
But the most important thing in a healthy relationship is the other person,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
And
I
what
get
that
what you're saying.
means is I'm not giving up myself because I'm taking care of me. I'm taking care of me because I'm the most important thing in the world.
Yeah.
But in a relationship, the most important thing is that other person, because some people need different things in different moments. Sometimes people need me to be honest with them, but sometimes people need me to lie to them,
Sure.
right? Like sometimes they really want me to lie.
Yeah.
Like there are times that my wife wants me to tell her she's right when she knows she's wrong. Like, but she wants that in that moment. She wants me to support her anger.
Yeah.
She wants me to support her hurt feelings.
I'm
So I'm
doing
gonna
that
do
a
that.
lot. I'm doing that a lot
Right?
with a newly pregnant wife. Yeah.
Yeah. Hormones are all over the place. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to own that behavior and own that thing and go,
Right.
oh, okay, this is where we're at. Sometimes people need a hug.
Yeah.
Sometimes they need space, right? So it's not trust. It's not love. It's not compassion. It's all of it. And it's all in flux. And if you can focus on the other person in that relationship, that's when you can start winning, right? So you're not wrong in your answer. Your answer was just the next question.
Yeah.
What's the most important thing in the world? The most important thing in the world is yourself,
Yeah.
right? And as long as you know that, you'll always take care of yourself. But if you're going to be in a healthy relationship, whether it's business or personal, the most important thing is that other person,
Yeah.
right? Because if I have a client and like all my clients want different things. Like
Right.
some of my clients want me to text them. Some of them want me to email them. Some of them want me to call them on the phone. Some of them want me to meet them in person. Some of them don't ever want to see me, right? They just want it done.
Yeah.
But if I
have
was
to
like,
do
oh,
it.
well, this is how I want it done, so you
Mhm.
have to do it that way too.
That's
What a
right.
shitty way to have a relationship.
True. And a business. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
when you're saying treat people the way you want to be treated, it's a shitty way to do it. They don't all want to be treated the way you want to be treated. Everybody's different. Everybody wants something different.
Yeah. What
Right?
if you're a selfish asshole? You want to treat someone else like a selfish asshole? You know, it's like,
Right.
yeah. Yeah. It's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. Because
And some people are content being an asshole. I'm content being an asshole.
right. At
People
least you
don't want to be
identify.
treated
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But I like busting each other's balls.
Yeah.
I like making fun of each other.
Mhm.
But I also like being hugged.
Yeah.
I also like I like all kinds of different shit. But there is nothing more fun than than being offensive to my friend about my friend. Right?
Totally.
Offending my friend about things about my friend, that's fun for me.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. And if they don't enjoy that, we're not going to get along and they're not going to be my friend.
Right. Your friends.
But it's
for a
also
reason. Yeah.
Right. And it also means that I'm not going to go so far that I'm hurting my friend.
Right.
Like it's all in good fun.
Yeah.
And my friends know that they can be like, bro, enough. And I'll be like,
Yeah.
all right, we're good.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
You know I love you.
Yeah, dude, and it's so funny because those are some of my best friends. You know, like it's true
Yeah.
what they say. Like if you have a group of friends, like there's friends that I would literally call if anything went down in my life, like
Mhm.
some crazy fucked up shit. I would call this person for like emotional support. But then also too, like if I had like a rough day at work or if I'm having an issue with my wife, I don't want to talk about it. I need my friends that are ball busters. And because that's how I'm like you. I've been called stoic, unemotional, an asshole at times because I sometimes a little more logical and less emotional, and I need either a logic written out, and I need to talk about it, and I need to tell someone about what I'm feeling, and they need to do it that way, and that's how I am on the logical aspect. But then I'm also like with my friends and even my really close friends, I'm just not emotional. I like getting away and being that ball buster and having those conversations with my buddies where it's like sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need to be an asshole, and there's nothing wrong with that, I think. You know,
Well, it
because
gives you perspective.
what's that?
It gives you perspective,
It does. Yeah, true.
right? Like
yeah, true.
I find that my wife tends to give me her perception and my
Mm.
friends tend to create perspective.
Perspective, yeah.
Right. And we talked about that earlier, perception versus perspective. My wife tends to lean towards how she feels about a situation, and give me quote unquote advice, whereas my friends bust my balls and give me the reality of the situation.
Yeah. And
right?
sometimes I'm guilty of doing that to my wife, and that's when I get reamed out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like there's that fine line of, and men are just wired differently, I think, where for whatever reason, we're more logical with a lot of stuff, and women are just more emotional, and there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes it's the reverse, and there's nothing wrong with that either, to where men are more emotional, women more logical. But I feel like me personally, just in my relationship, that is one of my biggest downfalls. I feel sometimes if she has something going on in her life, I'm not so quick to be emotional. I'm more quick to be like logical and practical. And I'm like, yeah, you could be upset about that for a little bit, but now we have to kind of do this. You know what I mean? And I think I need to get better at that,
I think you're mostly right. I think we're just emotional about different things.
True. Yeah, better way of saying that.
I think both are equally as emotional.
Yeah.
But I think I think if you think about the times that you're angry and what you're most angry about, and then realize that, okay, I'm only angry because I'm hurt. Why am I hurt by this situation? I guarantee you your wife looks at that situation extremely logically. I guarantee you she looks at that situation and goes, this is really simple to figure out. You just do this. Yeah. And for you, she gets emotional about something that you're super logical about. And you go, this is really super simple to figure out. You just do this.
Yeah.
We're just emotional about different things. So I don't think that one sex is more emotional than the other or more logical than the other. I just think it's typically different things that they're emotional about.
Or maybe I think the spouse that we choose, right? Like, I think when you find like a good spouse, or I don't want to say the perfect spouse, but the great match for you, sometimes they say opposites attract. That could be it, right? Because they're emotional when you need them to, they're logical when you need them to, and then it's the reverse. I've been in those relationships like we all have, where we're both like too logical, or we're both too emotional, and we don't counteract that yin and yang. And I think that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, imagine if you were both emotional about the same shit all the time.
Ugh,
oh my God, it would be exhausting.
It's like the Kardashians.
Right? You need somebody in your life that you can trust to be logical while you're being emotional.
Right.
So the things that make me the most emotional are not necessarily the things that are going to make my wife the most emotional, and vice versa. So the things she's emotional about, I'm typically like, that doesn't make sense. Why are you upset about that? Like that person's an idiot. You don't even barely know them. Why are you upset about what they said about whatever they said it?
Yeah.
Just ignore that. And it's like, just ignore it. Got it. Cool. Like that's just not how that works, right? When our feelings are hurt, we just can't just ignore stuff. Yeah. So I don't think it's that.
Yeah, I think my one of my favorite phrases, not my wife's favorite phrase by any means, but one of my favorite phrases is that. I'm like, babe, just ignore it. And she fucking hates it. It's like it's one of the worst things. It's up there with like be calm. Like if you ever try to tell your wife calm down, you never say that, by the way. But it's up there with that. It's pretty close. Where I'm just like, just ignore it, babe. Like something goes down, I'm just, who cares? Let's just ignore it. Forget about it. It is women and some men, but at least my wife, I could speak for her. She does not ignore things. She holds.
So now imagine your most frustrated moment in life, because I know you've had one.
Yes.
And your wife just walks up to you and goes, "Babe, just ignore it."
Oh, true.
Yeah, you wouldn't handle that well, would you?
I would fucking not handle it. Yeah,
right. And that's the point.
Yeah.
It's not that they're more or less emotional than us. It's just it's about different shit. Each person is emotional about what they decide to be emotional about.
Yeah.
So
we handle it pretty similarly. I mean, there might
almost identical.
Yeah, aside from maybe influx in voices. I mean, but it's relatively similar, I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, like a boy might put a fist through a wall, a girl might not. But it's just that concept of like, I don't think one sex is more emotional than the other. I just have never believed that. And I've always, like my dad is a blue collar plumber, right? And my mom's a therapist. Okay. My dad, they both wade through shit, right? My dad waded through literal shit. My mom waded through people's emotional shit, right? And here I am in the middle going, oh, this is your shit and this is how you deal with it, right? So it's just interesting to me when men are like, oh, women, they're so emotional. And then I would go to work with my dad And we would end up at a plumbing supply store talking for an hour and a half with him just talking to the guy about the counter about absolute nonsensical life shit. It was like, dude, I thought we were working today. Like, I thought, like, why are we still here doing this thing? Right? So it's men talk just as much and as long as women do. Like, look at us. We're on a podcast. I don't know how long we've been fucking doing this. I don't care. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you for hours. Yeah. I actually am enjoying talking to you. But the idea of like, oh, men and women are so different. They're not that fucking different.
No.
They're just not. It's just we are trained by society to look at them in specific ways. And then we get caught up in that specific way and go, well, I think this about women. And you're like, well, there's exceptions to every rule. Right? Like there just is. So every hard set rule, there's an exception. Yeah. But in general, to be like, oh yeah, men are less emotional than women. This is not true. I watch men be emotional. I'm emotional all the time. Yeah. Like constantly. And I have to fight through it.
Yeah. And I feel like, as we spend more time with our spouse, and we become, more like them, right? We adopt certain features, whether that's emotion or logic. And I've definitely become more emotional being with my wife because she's taught me how to be more compassionate, to listen more, and so many other things, that the qualities I didn't have, and I like to think I rubbed off on her as well. So I feel like, again, we talk about yin and yang, and hopefully we find this perfect match to where we're together forever, of course. But I think that's where it happens is we're emotional and logical in different things with a lot of different other characteristics and traits, but eventually we do kind of meet in that middle, and we do pick apart different qualities from each other and learn different things. And I feel like that's how we grow, and relationships are no different. Business relationships, personal relationships, but I feel like that's why if I could sum up this whole podcast, it's all about conversation and time, patience.
Yeah.
Because a great conversation that started shit could turn into one of the best conversations you have. A disagreement, with a spouse could turn into a fantastic resolution that ended up making your relationship even stronger. So it's through time and patience that I think we can adopt a lot of practices with each other to make each other happy, long term.
Well, yeah, it really comes down to the difference between listening and hearing. Right? Hearing is noise, listening is comprehension. So if I can listen and comprehend what's going on with you, I'm going to be more likely to be empathetic to what's going on. Right? So I live my life by a very strict set of black and white scenarios. And a lot of people give me shit about it because they're like, oh, there's a lot of gray. And I'm like, oh, I'm not denying the gray. It's just easier for me to live in the black and white. It's the way my brain works. And your brain may not work that way. You might get yourself stuck in the gray, and that's okay. But if you can figure out a way to get into the black and white of life, it's going to be easier for you to navigate. It's going to be easier for you to understand that most situations actually aren't in the gray. There's a black and white version of each, right? It's very much a hard line of this is where this person stands and this is where this person stands. And if you can figure out which one works best for you, you don't have to live in the gray. You can just accept that your version is your version and it's working for you. And if you want my advice or my opinion on it, great, I'll be happy to give it to you. But if you don't want it, that's also great and okay, as long as it's working for you. Yeah. If you're not damaging me or my people that I love, we're good.
We're good.
I can only affect what I can reach. If I can't reach you, then it's not going to affect you. And it's the same with all your negativity or all your bad shit that you're throwing out into the world. Like, if I can't reach you, I can't affect you, right? It's just, it's an interesting dynamic in the world when you start trying to convince everybody that they're wrong and you're right. Yeah. I don't want anybody to ever look at themselves and be like, oh, I'm wrong because this guy said I was wrong. It's not about that. I'm giving you something that works for me. If it doesn't work for you, then that's okay. Yeah. But I know it works because I work it, right? Like, it's really hard to argue with some of the points that I make when you break them down and be like, oh, what's the most important thing in a healthy relationship? The other person. No, it's trust. Well, if the other person wants you to trust them all the time, then yeah, that's really important to them. That makes it the other person.
Yeah.
Right? It just, because if you walk into every relationship thinking that trust or communication is the only thing that matters, that relationship is going to be really hard.
What about everything else? Yeah.
Yeah, because what about everything else? What about all the other stuff that somebody needs from you at that time?
Yeah.
It gets really fucking hard to wade through all the gray. So if you can make it black and white, if you can really have hard definitions of things, I mean, that's why they have different words. People are like, oh, well, that's just a synonym of this word. It's like, but it's still a different word.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason why it's different.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made the other word.
Yeah.
Like that's why the other word's there.
And leave it to us to make a word like a synonym. The fact that we created a synonym complicated things even more. Like if we just kept it black and white and kept words separate, then it wouldn't be so complex. Yeah.
And if you can figure out how to do that in your relationships, whether they're professional or they're personal, you have to be on the same page with your partner with it. You have to look at them and say, like when somebody matters to me, I look at them and say, wait, what does that word mean to you? Like you keep using that word. What does it mean to you? Because I don't think it means, it's like that fucking, do you ever see The Princess Bride?
Oh, yeah.
That word, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Right? What do you right?
Yeah.
Inconceivable. I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Right.
Right? It's that same concept. When I'm in a conversation with somebody that matters to me and they keep using a word over and over again and it hurts my feelings, eventually I either have to accept that that's their word, that they're going to use that way, and I have to stop being hurt by it if I want to keep the relationship, or I have to look at them and go, you keep using that word. I need to know what it means to you.
Yeah.
And then if they tell me what it means and it means what I think it means and it's hurting me, I get to go, that hurts my feelings. I'd rather you didn't do that. And if they say, fuck you, too bad, I go, oh, I have to reevaluate this relationship.
That's right.
But if it means something completely different to them than what I thought it meant, because they're basing it on their perception of the word, about their lived experience through that word, then now I can go, oh, yeah, that's not what that word means. Yeah. Okay. If you're going to keep using it, I'm going to understand that that's your definition of it. And I'm going to be okay with it in myself because you keep using it. Like, so I have to change my trauma, my childhood experience that made that word make me feel that way. So I can be in this relationship with you based on the way you use the word. Yeah. Or we can agree to use the word the way it was intended to be used by the definition.
Yeah. Or any of those or agree not to talk to each other.
Right. Yeah. Which are all resolutions, right? There's no compromise in any of that. All of that becomes resolution, right? All of that becomes solving a problem. But the longer that I just eat it and push it down and deal with the gray area of like, well, some things don't mean what they mean, and I don't actually fully understand what's going on, then I'm the one that's fucked. I'm the one that's going to have resentment. I'm the one that's going to be like, you don't give a shit about my feelings. I told you that hurts my feelings, but you keep saying it.
Yeah.
And your response to it is, I told you that's not what it means to me.
Yeah. And then next thing you know, time goes on, and we become committed to these ideas. And, eventually gets to the point to where, whether it's a word or an idea or a opinion that you had, whether it's right or wrong, you eventually go through your entire life just being surrounded by this stuff and embedded in this that you can't change. Eventually we get to the point to where now you're 40, 50 years old and you can't be changed. And that's not a good place to be either, where you don't want to resolve problems. And that's one thing that I think we're talking about here a lot, which is, again, whether it's a conflict or not, it's that patience and that having that conversation, because that is important. I mean, what you're talking about is very logical and makes a ton of sense. But to a lot of people, it's like, ugh, Danny, that's a lot of work. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. But, if you don't care about the person, you don't have to put in any work. But if it's someone you care about, whether it's a friend or a loved one, it's important to put in the work because it's going to make things a lot better and it's going to make that relationship stronger. But
well, if you think about a relationship, right? All relationships are work. It's just at the beginning of them, you enjoy the work.
Yeah.
You enjoy the work that it takes to be in that relationship at the beginning. Right. You enjoy holding hands. You enjoy showing up with flowers. You enjoy talking all hours of the night. You enjoy having a follow-up text. You enjoy holding each other. You enjoy cuddling each other. You enjoy all of these things that are actually work. You just enjoy the work. And then eventually you get tired of doing all the work because you have other shit that goes on, and you feel comfortable and safe in that relationship to a point where you're like, fuck the work. I don't need to do that work anymore. But if you look at, you're having a baby, the amount of work that's going to go into that baby in the first 4 to 5 years is insane. And as a parent, if you're good at it, you're going to love that work. But when they're 5 and they go off to school, that's why it's so hard in that moment, because they are the ones in that relationship that start to separate themselves from you. You're holding them. You're cuddling them. You're loving them. You're kissing them. You're teaching them to talk. You're teaching them to laugh. You're teaching them to play. You're engaging with them. You're teaching your morals. You're teaching your values. They're running up to you and hugging you. They're running up to you and loving you. They cry when you're not around. They stop crying when you hold them. There's all this work that goes into this person. And then when they're 4, they go, fuck you, Dad. I'm out of here. See ya. And they run and they go play with your friends. And you're like, bro, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Right?
True.
They're the ones that start separating. So then you have to force the work onto them so they can become a good person, so that they can learn that, hey, you have to respect me. Hey, you have to remember that I love you, so you have to love me back. We have to do these things together, because if you don't, then you're raising a person that's not going to function as effectively in the world.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? They're going to forget. So all relationships are work. We just love doing the work at the beginning. It's new. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I tell people I don't give flowers to apologize. Never.
Yeah.
I do not give gifts to apologize. I refuse to.
Same.
Because that's, if I'm going to give you flowers, it's going to be for no reason.
Right.
Because they should make you feel good.
Yeah.
I don't want to taint flowers for the person I love. I want them to be something that's exciting for them to get, and they got them because I love them and they know that. Right?
Yeah, positive affirmation. It's huge. You know, especially, I mean, you kind of related, it sounds kind of shitty, but I related to like when you're training a puppy. You know, you got to kind of.
It's not shitty.
Yeah.
I say it all the time.
All right, cool. So, I mean, you got to treat a relationship kind of the similar way as, you know, if they piss on the carpet, you're not going to give them a treat.
Right.
You know, you're going to give them a treat when they do something good, because you want them to associate that good behavior with a treat, not the opposite. You know, you don't want to taint them. And I'm the same way. My wife can't stand flowers anyway, but it's so funny when it's just random and she doesn't expect it. And it's like a Tuesday at like 2:30 p.m. and I'll just kind of show up with a bouquet. She loves it. It's the greatest thing in the world to her. You know, she likes the surprise of that, versus like if I was to say I'm sorry with flowers or a gift or something like that, she would be tainted by that, and tainted by those gifts and that flowers. So yeah, it's a great point. I think a lot of people need to follow that practice with not just flowers, but just in general with relationships, of really just taking your time and understanding what's going to trigger certain things and those affirmations that are going to be long-term. Because that's one thing I realized in this relationship. I'm 37 now, but like a lot of us, we just ruined a lot of time in relationships. But I learned so much in those relationships, whether it was negative or positive. And now I put those into this relationship, and I feel like our marriage is way stronger. So, you know, the bullshit that I went through and all the bad things that I did and all the mistakes that I made, I'm not making them now. And I'm going to continue to make mistakes, and I'm going to learn from those and get better at it. But that is one thing I learned a lot of, is not associating, you know, bad behavior with good things. Yeah. Trying to be conscious of it anyway.
Well, it's just important. Like, and I use the dog analogy with children all the time. I tell people all the time, like, if I meet your dog, the way your dog behaves is the way your kid's going to behave. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just real. Yeah. Like, I love dogs. We have 4 dogs. They're all rescue dogs. We love them. But my wife gets mad at me because I think that dogs and children are there to play and be loved. Yeah. They need boundaries. They need like rules, but they don't need a job. Like, we have a shepherd that she wanted to train to be like a rescue shepherd. And I was like, that's a lot of work. Yeah. I was like, that's constant work. Like, you have to, like, if you want to train your kid to be a supreme athlete, it's every day. It's all day. You're deciding what the purpose of that child is. Yeah. And if you decide what the purpose of your dog is, then you have to stay on that dog constantly to have that particular source of their reality. Of like, okay, this dog is going to be a security dog, and I'm going to teach it how to be a bite dog, and I'm going to bite train it. Then you have to stay on it all the time, because it could just go rogue and bite somebody. So
Yeah.
every day, all day, you have to be there with that dog, paying attention, deciding what it's going to be. Whereas for me, I'm like, nah, man, it's going to do what it loves to do, and it's going to have boundaries in that situation.
That's right.
Right?
Let it
I'm
be a
going to
dog.
love it. I'm gonna let it be a dog. Let it love its life. Let it, run and play and live its best life. And it's going to cuddle me, and it's going to love me, and it's going to, and I'm going to make boundaries for it. I'm going to say what's acceptable and not acceptable. And I do the same thing with my kid. With my kid, I go, okay, I'm going to love her, and I'm going to appreciate her, and I'm going to have her have fun. But that doesn't mean I don't have boundaries for her. It doesn't mean she doesn't have rules.
Of course.
It just means that I'm not deciding that she's going to be a softball player for her entire existence.
Yeah.
She chooses softball. I'm going to hold her accountable for the work it takes to be part of that team.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're not training her to be in a Nazi regime. She doesn't have to salute you every time, and just let her live her life. Yeah.
Yeah. Just live, let her become who she's going to become.
That's right.
With the boundaries and the morals and values that I decided were important. Same concept with my dog. And people get mad at me all the time. They're like, "Oh, it's a terrible thing to compare your kid to a dog." Why? I love my dog just as much as I love my kid. They're both
part of the family. Yeah.
They're both part of the family. I love them. Obviously, I'm going to do more for my kid than I would do for my dog. And if I had to choose between my dog and my kid, it's a no fucking brainer. Let's not be crazy. It's obviously the dog.
Right?
Yeah, it's obviously the dog. But it's we're both in a lot of trouble for that clip right there.
For sure. Yeah, I might clip that one and send it directly to the wife.
Yeah, she's gonna love that.
Yeah,
she's like, "See, I'm not the only one, honey. This guy here, I just met him, and he's an idiot."
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah,
yeah, sure. But yeah, it's the idea of you just have to raise kids to be functioning adults. That's your job.
Yeah,
your job isn't to be their friend. Your job isn't to be their buddy. Your job isn't your job is just to make sure that they can survive on their own. Because if they can't, then you failed. Yeah, that's the job, right?
And at the end of the day, I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. I'm speaking from fucking experience. When my dad, in particular, just I think instilled every single great piece of advice in my 20s, especially after the divorce, and he got remarried, and there was resentment and whatever, and I was just being a kid, right? And he would give me all the advice in the world to make me successful, and I listened to fuck all of it. I didn't do any of it. And then 10 years later, I finally got my shit together and figured everything out. And again, he was doing all the right things. Once you get a certain age, they're just going to do what they're going to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just got to do the best. And I think that goes with any relationship, not just kids or dogs or spouses, but you just got to do the best you can as a human. You got to do the best things and try to be a good human yourself. Maybe do some charity work, maybe be kind to a stranger, give someone a hug if it's not sexual harassment and they need it, even if you don't know them very well. You just got to do whatever you can to be the best human you can. Expect others to do the same. Treat your friends and family and loved ones with kindness and compassion and empathy. But we're all going to do what we're going to do. We're all going to make mistakes and shit happens. And that's why just going back to erasing history, that's crazy, man, because I'm so happy that I was rebellious in my 20s, and I'm so happy I was a prick to my father, because I feel like our relationship is even stronger now because, he looks at me and he never said, still to the day, I'm 37, and he never said, I told you so. That he threw it in my face back then, but now that I'm successful, he never said you should listen to me 10 years ago. Never says that, because he knows that I fucked up, and I know I fucked up, and I learned from those mistakes, and now it's made me stronger and more secure and more confident. And I think that's important. We just got to kind of let the chips fall where they may sometimes,
Well, there's no benefit in it. There's no benefit in saying I told you so.
Yeah.
It's like I get shit. People act like I don't have consequences for my kid or punish my kid. You choose a word, right? You choose a word that means what you want it to mean for yourself. But the reality is, when you punish somebody, you're penalizing them for a behavior, and it makes them feel bad, and it makes them upset, and it makes them feel like they don't know why it's happening sometimes. Whereas a consequence is something that occurs directly related to the action that you did. So if it directly affects you based on the actions of how you behaved, then it's a consequence. But if I make some shit up and if you lied to me and I take your TV away, they don't correlate. They're not the same thing. They don't match. So it doesn't make any sense. If you lied to me, that means I can't trust you. So now what do I equate to trust? Can you go places by yourself? Can I trust you to go do that thing? No, now you have to do that thing with me. And if I don't want to do it, then you don't get to do it. Right? That's how we create consequences that are based on the action and the behavior that you had. If I'm just making up random punishments that don't have anything to do with what you did, then you're not learning an actual lesson. You're just feeling bad for the shit that you did, and you have no reason or no understanding of to why you feel bad. Yeah. That's insane.
True.
So and one of the things that everybody's on this kick that for this last decade, right? And Gary Vee's a big one that talks about it is lead with kindness, lead with kindness, lead with kindness. I say fuck that. I say lead with love. Because sometimes love doesn't look kind. Sometimes love is hard. Sometimes love is setting a boundary and saying this is unacceptable, right? Sometimes love is saying you can't be in my life if that's how you're going to behave, right? So if I'm leading with love, sometimes it's not what other people would see as kindness, right? I'm not going to sacrifice myself for your benefit. That's kindness.
That's right.
Right? So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to lead with love. And if you look at the people that are the most successful on the internet and their social media and their shows and their personalities, they lead with love. Yeah. Whether you agree with them or disagree with them, they're leading from a place of love. That's right. Love or hate Ben Shapiro, love or hate Jordan Peterson, love or hate Joe Rogan, love or hate the Kardashians, they love where they're coming from. Yeah. They love what they're doing. And when they say shit, they're saying it because they believe it and they love whoever they're talking to and they want them to believe it too.
Yeah.
So when you lead with love, that's when you start to win. When you lead with kindness, you start to get exhausted because you feel like you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
Because
or
kindness,
you're giving too much. You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
And people feel like kindness is this wave of like, oh, we just have to be kind to everybody. No, we don't have to be fucking kind to everybody.
Yeah.
You have to love people. You have to love what you're doing. And yes, kindness is a great thing. I'm not shitting on kindness as a whole.
Of course.
But if you're not leading with that love first, I didn't meet you coming into this going, oh man, I hope I don't fucking hate this kid. I came into this going, man, I hope I love this guy. I hope I love everything about this guy. I hope this is going to be a fun conversation and I love talking to him. Yeah. And I'm going to come from a place where I'm going to assume he invited me to talk to him because he found something that he loved about me that he wanted to talk about. Right?
Sure.
So for me, that's way different than kindness. And it's just so much more valuable in our relationships.
Yeah.
Right? It comes back to like treating people the way they want to be treated. Sometimes it's not about kindness. Sometimes it's just about love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great way of looking at it too. And for people that are like, no, kindness is the way. Well, if you love something, set it free, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not kind when you set something, right? When you set someone free. But you love that person, so if you love them, set them free. And that alone should answer your question that leading with love is the most important because sometimes it's best, to do that. Sometimes love is anger. Sometimes love is hard and not fair and it's beautiful. And sometimes it is a lot of other things. But yeah, I love that, pun intended, that it's, leading with love is huge for sure.
Yeah, because like, especially when you become a new dad, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be fun for you to set boundaries for your kids sometimes. Like they're going to be upset.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be, they're going to be sad and they're going to be hurt and they're going to be angry and they're not going to like every scenario. Yeah. But if you're a good parent, you're giving them those boundaries because you love them.
Yeah.
True. So if you're sitting there trying to be like, oh, I have to be kind to my kid all the time. Oh, I have to be kind and generous to my kid all the time. You're going to fucking struggle, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's going to be tough.
Well, this is where we're at now, right? We talked about it over an hour ago. We're at an hour and 30. I can't believe that. Time's flying. Yeah. I could talk to you for another couple hours for sure. But
whatever you want to do, bro.
If I don't have this damn OBGYN appointment. No, but we talked about it earlier to where, where does this stem from, right? Where we come from. And I think what you alluded to just now is very impactful to where we don't lead with love. Sometimes we do lead with kindness and we want to make other people happy around us for not a good reason. And that's made us soft. And now we're in a situation where, you know, there's various topics that we could talk about perhaps on another podcast, to where we have made things and people soft, and it's affecting our children and relationships around us, and not a positive way, because maybe we are leading with kindness versus love. So,
well, it's that. Here we go. Let's fucking break the internet. You have a bigger following than me. You'll be in more trouble than I will be. It's kind to let people define themselves however they want to define themselves.
Yeah.
It's loving to help them understand why they define themselves that way.
Mm.
Do I need to repeat myself? Because I will. It's
But
kind to let
yeah.
it's kind to let people say, I identify as X, Y, or Z.
Right.
Cool. Good for you. I don't know you. That's how you want to be. Do it.
Yeah.
It's loving to go, really? Why? Why do you define yourself that way?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see a benefit in that for you? How is that going to help you improve your life?
Yeah.
That's love. Mm. Kindness is saying, wow, that's great. Good for you. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad you found that. Love is going, really? Why? I'd like to understand that.
Yeah.
Are you sure that's the best choice? Are you sure you want to tell everybody that you're a red fox? Are you sure that's what you want to do? Because I don't know that that's going to work out the way you think it's going to work out with the majority of people. Let's have a conversation about that. Yeah. That's love. And love is hard.
Hell yeah. No,
right?
Man. For real, dude.
That's not transphobic. That's not hating people because they want to be called whatever they want to be called. That's me loving you and wanting to understand why you want to be called it.
Yeah.
We came from a world in my generation, your generation, where we didn't introduce ourselves based on pronouns. We introduced ourselves based on names.
Yep.
Right? And if your name was Jamie, we knew that was a unisex name. We knew that you could be boy or girl with that name. So we would get an email or we'd get a phone call and we'd go, oh, I wonder if that's a boy or a girl. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There was no descriptor in there for me to really get an idea. So when I meet them, I guess I'll find out. Yeah. But if you tell me your name is Mike and you show up and you're a girl, I go, wow, that's an interesting name. Why's your name Mike?
Yeah.
And you tell me that story. Mm-hmm. Never once did I need to know what you identified as. Never once did I, and that's not me being phobic of anything. I'm not scared of you.
Yeah.
I just want to understand you. And you should want me to understand you.
Yeah.
But if we're just going to be leading with kindness and letting people define everything the way that they want to define it and say whatever the fuck they want to say, that's not love. That's kindness. And then now we're getting into, are we being nice or kind? Right?
Yeah.
Seems like we're just being nice to people because there's a bunch of people that disagree with whatever you're doing, but they're just placating you, which is nice. Kindness is actually genuinely doing something heartfelt, and you're taking something from yourself and giving it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Love is setting a boundary and saying, hey, I love you. I want to understand you. Yeah. Right? So when I lead with love, I want to understand. So if you come to me and say, this is how I identify and I care about you, I go, really? Why? Explain that to me. I want to get it.
Yep. It's
not because I'm being rude. It's not because I'm scared of you doing it. It's because I want what's best for you. And the majority is where we have to sometimes live in, right? That's that black and white versus gray area. You're trying to take the gray area and make it black and white. That's not how it works.
No.
The black and white is boy and girl. The gray is all the other stuff in the middle that you want to define yourself as.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with you living in the gray. If that's your black and white, cool, go for it. I have no fucking problem with it.
But don't change the black and white.
But don't change the black and white.
Yeah.
But don't try and take, you trying to take something from other people because you want it to be a different way. That's not okay with me.
Yeah.
It's just not. That's just not how the world should work.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, too. I agree with all points because, it's almost like if you're having a conversation with me right now, whether we're face-to-face or on this podcast, and you start being an asshole, my definition of an asshole is different than maybe your definition of an asshole.
Right.
So I'm not going to tell you, don't be an asshole, because your definition is going to be different. So the fact that we have everybody else trying to tell us what certain words are, male, female, all these different pronouns, that to me is where it gets a little squirrely for a lot of reasons. And the big reason I think is because now you're telling me what I have to do to make you happy.
Right.
Which is a very interesting concept because we've never done that before, where it was so okay to do in mass media, and we think that this is the new thing and we're changing laws and like all these people, which are male or female, depending on who you are. But either way, you're male or female. Prior to this whole movement of pronouns and what you identify as, I didn't care. Like you mentioned earlier, like the name
Didn't
Jamie.
care.
That was just that's a fantastic analogy, because even if you were transgender when you showed up, I don't care. Like, it's all good, man. You're still Jamie. You're still a boy or a girl, and my life is not going to be any different. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But now you're shoving this down our throats, and you're telling us that it does matter, and it doesn't. And in so facto, you're actually doing something quite like absolutely mind-blowing that not a lot of people talk about. I talk a lot about it on this podcast because I have some friends that know people that are transgender, and I've had conversations. They won't come on the show because I've been very curious to have this conversation publicly because it's really affecting women.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I use the word loosely, but real women. Like, biologically, you're a woman and you continue to be a woman. And the greatest example is Caitlyn Jenner. She, you know, and Chappelle has a great bit about this to where the first year she was a woman, she became Woman of the Year.
Yeah.
And she never had a period.
Yeah.
Like, that to me, and still has all of her male privates. Yeah. That to me is like the epitome of pissing on everything that women stand for and everything that women are. Now, my wife and myself, we've had some issues getting pregnant, and even though we're both, everything's fine on both ends, just for whatever reason, it's just not happening. Happens to a lot of women, happens to millions of women a year where they can't. So
constantly.
Yeah, and you know, I don't want to define a woman as giving birth and creating human, but I think it's important, the distinction that we are different biologically and also what we are right now, man and women, to where when you take that away, when you say that I, Tony, can just be a woman, that takes away my wife and her ability to not only be able to conceive and to have a child, but also everything that she goes through as a woman. You know, her period and the pain that she goes through and just everything that a woman goes through. Same thing with the man. You know, you don't want to take that away, but women, I think, are getting more hurt by this because there's never going to be, I don't think, where, for example, if a woman decides to be a man and wants to go into the NBA and go up against LeBron James, she's going to lose.
It's never going to be an issue.
Yeah, she's going to lose. No one's going to care about that. In fact, LeBron will go ahead.
You know what's ironic? Yeah. What's ironic is it's more women have to compromise.
That's right. Yeah. That's what, yeah.
They have to give up more so men can have what they want.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's all it is.
It's all it is.
Like that's literally all this is. This is a bunch of men that were born as men.
Yeah.
Wanting women to compromise and allow them to have what they have fought for years. And I don't have a problem with you playing sports. Right. Just create a trans league.
Correct.
There's no problem with you being in sports with people that are physically the same, have the physical same abilities that you have. And yes, there are fucking outliers. There are women out there that are absolute fucking savages in sports and could keep up with any man, no question. But they're outliers.
That's right.
They're exceptions to the rule, the whole, right? We talk about everybody's in the whole in the group of things. I don't have a problem with you identifying as what you want to identify.
Yeah.
That's not what I have an issue with. What I have an issue with is you wanting me to compromise for you to have extra shit. Mm-hmm. You can have the same shit, but you can't have extra shit.
Yeah.
That's not fair. And you don't get to play the sympathy card and say, "Oh, poor me, I was born this way. I didn't choose it. I should get more." That's not how that works. Yeah. You don't get more. You get,
and it's, go ahead.
You just don't get it. Like if you're born with a disability, we don't tell that person that they have to suffer in that disability. We do our best to get them to equal. Right? If you're a quadriplegic or a paraplegic, we give you tools to help you be mobile and communicate and interact to the best equal that we can get you to.
Yeah.
Right? If you're born with some sort of mental illness or Down syndrome or some sort of other impairment, that call it whatever word you want. I don't want anybody being upset that we're talking about this topic, but this is a real topic. This is a real thing that I'm not affected by it.
Right.
I personally am not affected by it. But if there's a boy that's 18 years old that decides decides he wants to share that he's in the wrong body, and he wants to tell people that, hey, I think that I'm not supposed to be in this body. I think that I know that this for me, I'm a woman. I think I'm in the wrong body. I think that these are the things that are going on with me. I want to be a woman. Okay, great. That doesn't mean you get to join the softball team.
Right.
And quite frankly, if you're born in the wrong fucking body, you have more things to deal with than being on the fucking swim team.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not because I think that you're wrong or you're broken. That means because if I'm hurt, if I go through something that's traumatic, like just the smallest thing of trauma, it's got to be fucking hell to be living in the wrong body with the wrong parts. I can only imagine it's fucking hell and exhausting. Yeah. The last thing you need to worry about is the fucking swim team or the fucking softball team or basketball or whatever other fucking sport there is. You have a lot of other shit to go through.
Yeah.
You have a lot of other shit to wade through. That shouldn't even be on your fucking list right now.
Yeah. And, by the way, everything you're mentioning is, again, is logical. And a lot of people out there are thinking, well, but this, but that. And there's a lot of buts in this argument that I've had numerous times. But it's so interesting that this is not like transgenders needing to vote.
No.
This is not they need to be equal and as a human, because we all think that, just like everyone else in the LGBTQ community. What's so interesting and what's so exciting about the gay community as a whole is once they got the right to vote, which should have never been an issue anyway, or excuse me, not right to vote, right to be married, which should have never been an issue anyway. Once they got that right, that was it. There was no hubbub. There was no other issues because they're just humans. They're humans. But when you're trying to shove this transgender issue down everyone's throat, the problem is you're making it a bigger issue than what it is, which is live in your own body. If you're uncomfortable in the body you're in, do whatever you want. It's your body. Have at it. But do not change everyone else's world because you're not you're not comfortable with that body. That's, I think, the problem that we're living in is they think that they're not looked as equals, but they are because they've been walking around for decades and no one cared. Not that we don't care about humans, but we just don't care about what you decide to do with your life unless it affects our life. And then when you start dipping into like these sports, which is where it gets really squirrely, or the bathroom situation, which I think has been rectified a little bit, but it's still kind of funky that we're allowing certain things. Especially as a father with a baby girl on the way, it terrifies me a little bit because I'm sure like you as a father as well, what terrifies me the most is I know men, and I know white men in particular because I am one, and we are privileged at some times, and we're assholes, and we're gross, and we're irresponsible a lot, and I don't want to be in a situation where me as a white male could walk up to any woman's bathroom and say, I identify as a woman. And there's no law preventing that because we're getting so far on the opposite side where the pendulum is going to break eventually before it fixes itself. And I think we're going to start to realize this because now there's more and more issues of, women or girls in particular transitioning into men. And then years down the road, they're changing their minds because it was the worst decision ever. And that to me is very interesting and very unfortunate, but this is what happens when you're leading with kindness. This is what happens when you're bending over backwards for a very small portion of the population for no reason except for, I don't know, political votes, mass media. I mean, I don't know what the fucking reason is, but it is terrifying that this is happening in such a quick amount of time. I mean, I feel like 10 years maybe. It's just
the internet makes things faster.
Sure.
And it makes us feel like it's everywhere when it's not.
Sure.
It also creates people wanting to be involved in things that they shouldn't be involved in. So one of the biggest things that I talked about with my daughter during, her transition from middle school to high school, and even in middle school, it was, some people are really actually struggling with the idea that they're in the wrong body.
Mm-hmm.
And they may very well be. And I know people that are trans. I have very close people in my world that are trans, and I love them dearly.
Yeah.
That's not what this is about. This is about people that are not struggling, using it to take advantage of the situation to fit in somewhere because they don't feel like they fit anywhere else. And that's not fair to the people that are struggling with a very real situation.
That's right.
I don't think that it's fake. I don't think that you're making it up. I don't think that you are identifying as a woman or a man because you want to and you think it's fun.
Yeah.
For the majority of the people that are doing it, I just think that there are the outliers that are doing that, and they're taking advantage of a system. And people are always going to take advantage of a system, but at what point do we go, okay, if trans is going to be a third gender, right?
Yeah.
Because that, to me, that's the resolution. The resolution is there's male, there's female, and there's trans.
Right.
That to me makes logical sense.
Absolutely.
Now you don't have to identify as a boy or a girl. You're a trans person, and I'm okay with you being a trans person. I accept you for who you are and what you are, and it doesn't matter what your parts are or what your physical being is. I just know that that's who you are. So now we're just going to figure out some of the logistics. Right. Okay, what that means is somebody in the trans world, because somebody in the female world had to say, okay, I want to play sports, so I'm going to make a women's league. Mm-hmm. Or some girl dad was like, well, I want my girls to play sports, so I'm going to make a league.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be in sports as a trans person, then you create a trans league. Yeah. And as far as,
by the way, just like, not to interrupt you, but just like we do with the WNBA. Like this is not a far-fetched idea. The reason why we created the WNBA is because you don't want a 130-pound woman playing against LeBron James, because that's not fair. And we tell ourselves that we want equality, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, but I think equality is important for a lot of things that I'm not mentioning right now, meaning like voting, equal pay, like all that type of stuff is very important. But put all the stuff aside, like the political aspect of it. In terms of equality, we are not equal. We have never been equal as humans. You and I are not equal. You're better at one thing than I am, and vice versa. LeBron James is a male, as am I. He is better at basketball than I am. Fact? Mm-hmm. Okay, so is he more of a male than me?
I don't know how to equate that.
Nor I. But we're trying to put everybody in the same box of, no, we're all equal. We're all this. So transgender, a woman that was a man for 30 years of her life is now a woman. She's allowed to fight in the woman UFC. Right?
Well, I think this is where we get into words, right? And we have to figure out what people are defining as equal.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that word becomes very subjective very quickly.
Of course. Yeah.
Equality. And my mother has a saying that I use still today that she always said it is, fair is not equal, equal is not fair.
Yeah, I like that.
Right?
That makes sense.
And the reality is that just because you think it's equal doesn't mean it's fair. And just because you think it's fair doesn't mean it's going to be equal. So you have to figure out on your own personal level what you want. And I don't think when people are having these conversations the way that we're having them, our intention is to tell anybody that they're wrong or that they can't do what they're doing.
Of course. Yeah.
What we're trying to do is have a voice in the conversation. And I'm only having a voice in the conversation from a parent's perspective.
Right.
As an adult male, I don't give a fuck.
Right. Yeah.
I'm in no danger of losing anything. I don't care.
If anything, we're gaining more, by the way.
Sure.
Yeah.
But as a parent of a child, whether it be boy or girl, I want a voice in what's going to happen because it's going to affect their life, and they don't have a voice yet.
Right.
They don't get to vote. They don't get to decide things. They don't get to be involved in adult conversations. They don't get to say what their opinion is on things and be understood and heard in a way that makes any sense because, one, they're kids and they don't comprehend shit fully yet, and they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
So that's my job to set borders and boundaries for them. And one of those borders and boundaries is I don't want her sharing a bathroom with somebody that may want to hurt her and harm her. And that doesn't mean that there's a trans person that wants to hurt her or harm her. That means that there's a pedophile out there that's pretending that wants to hurt her or harm her. That's the difference.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit who's in the bathroom with me. That does not affect me. I'm an adult.
Right.
It's not going to change my world. But if I have a 9-year-old little girl and a dude walks in to her bathroom when she's in there by herself, because as an adult, I can't go in there with her, then I have to find a family bathroom so she can go in by herself, or I have to have an adult woman go in with her because I'm personally not comfortable going into the women's room. And then I'm not personally comfortable bringing my daughter into the men's room.
Right, exactly.
Like, that's just not something I'm comfortable with. I don't need her to see a bunch of dudes swinging dicks at a fucking urinal. Like, that's just not what she needs to see at 7 years old.
Yeah.
Right? So it's you have to navigate these things with the understanding that I'm not coming from a place of telling you can't have what you want.
Right.
I'm telling you, let's find a way to get you what you want that makes sense for the majority.
Right.
The majority. Because we have to live in a world where the majority works. That's the only way. There can be outliers. There can be people that are extraordinary, and there can be people that are less extraordinary, right? There can be outliers of all situations. There can be exceptions to the majority.
Right.
I'm not upset with the exceptions. LeBron James is an exception to the majority.
That's right.
The majority of people will never play basketball at the level of Michael Jordan and LeBron James and Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
The vast majority will never play at that level.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm not asking you to not be your version of LeBron and live your best life. I'm asking you to understand that the majorities have to be
on the same page.
A thing. Right? That's why public school is public school. They work towards the majorities, and they create situations in public school for the kids that have special needs, the kids that have things that are outliers. They have them for people that are outliers in the positive and outliers in the negative. However you want to look at it. I know I'm going to get shit for calling it negative. That you like. I couldn't fucking read. Okay, I still barely read. That the point isn't that. The point is like when we look at things, they're on a scale, a sliding scale, and whatever lands in the majority of that sliding scale is what we have to look at. And I'm not in the majority. I know that about myself.
Yeah.
I'm in the majority of being a white, straight male. I fall in those majorities. But I do content creation for a living. I literally invented my own business model to do what I do. Nobody else does what I do the way that I do it.
Yeah.
So I'm an outlier in that, which means I have to go convince people that it's a good idea to do what I want them to do and pay me for it.
Yeah.
Right? That's where, for me, I'm not worried about what you're doing and what is equal and what is fair. And it's all fucking hard.
Right.
Life is hard to navigate for everybody. Some of us do have it easier than others. And that's because some of us were loved more than others. Some of us were born in better places than others. Some people have, like, if we're going to, like, your sexuality, your skin color, your gender, all affect your world.
Right.
And some of it's positive and some of it's negative, and you have to navigate that.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking that away from anybody. I just want to understand it.
Right.
And if you don't explain it to me in a way that I understand it, I'm going to continue having the conversation with people that may not understand it either until we figure it out together so we understand it. So you have options. You can either let us, straight white males, keep having dumb fucking conversations about it and make assumptions, or you can talk to us like normal human beings and say, this is what I'm doing and this is why and this is what I want and this is how I want it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You understand? Like, then we have to have a conversation to come up with a resolution that works, not a compromise, a resolution.
Yeah,
something that solves the issue.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of compromising going on, and not to appease the majority either, right? Because if you line up 100 people and have this conversation with 100 people, I think 98 of them, maybe more, would agree with everything that you and I said, subjectively, I'm sure. But there's definitely there's a lot more people I think that agree with this than what we're being told. And, for whatever reason that is motivating.
Kindness.
Kindness. Yeah, probably.
That's what it is. It's leading with kindness. And the problem with leading with kindness is love has boundaries.
Yeah.
Love is not unconditional.
Yeah.
Love has conditions. And the minute we get into this idea that love is unconditional and that we need to lead with kindness is when we start appeasing everybody and stop protecting the ones we love. And stop protecting. You can't.
Everybody. Yeah.
You cannot. That's why you have to work in majorities.
Yeah.
There is no, and as a black and white liver, there's no black and white that can solve the problem.
Yeah.
These are the majority of major issues have a lot of gray, which is why that's why I live in a pro-choice world.
Yeah.
I don't care what you're choosing. As long as it enhances your life for the better, I'm pro you making that choice.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't care what that is. But I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like your choices don't affect the general.
Right.
They do. My choices affect the general. Having this conversation with you is affecting my world. People are going to listen to this. People are going to see it. I don't know how many viewers and listeners you have. It's more than I do. So again, you're in more trouble than I am.
Right.
But anybody that listens to it that knows me and is like, oh, I want to see what Danny talked to Tony about, they're going to hear it. And they've all heard this from me. They all know how I feel about these topics.
Yeah.
Because I don't give a fuck what you think of me. I just don't.
Yeah. I think this is what people really need to listen to, which is these opinions that we both have, whether they agree with someone listening or not. The point is, though, the reason we have these opinions is because we are like the spouse that is getting told to calm down.
Yeah,
we're getting told emotional. We're getting told to calm down, and we're not going to react very well to it. And the fact that there's a lot of laws that are changing and things that aren't really on par with what the majority believes, this is where we feel attacked a little bit. At least I do anyway. And like you, I didn't really start worrying about this until I started thinking about having a family. And then now that, I do, it really worries me, especially because I talk to other guys of mine, friends of mine that have children that have actually pulled their children out, specifically women, their girls, pull their little girls out of school, middle school and high school, just because of certain things that were going on that didn't make sense, certain practices being taught and certain conversations that were being had, not just around transgender, but just around everything that was just uncomfortable. And it's interesting that we allow our youth to be kind of, I don't want to say tainted, that's probably the wrong word, but we are so easily convinced by trends or certain things that are hot topics, and we right away use like our kids to be the test dummy. And we don't understand that 30 years from now, 50 years from now, it's going to have a huge impact on our species, for the better or worse. We don't know yet. But
what I would say to your people that are pulling their children out of school, stop being a fucking baby. Like, it's not that fucking serious.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't want your kid, the shit your kid hears in middle school, you don't even fucking want to know.
Oh, yeah.
There's kids getting hand jobs and fucking blow jobs and having sex in fucking middle school. And if your biggest worry is that one of the kids identifies in a way that you're fucking uncomfortable with, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You're being a fucking baby.
Yeah.
Like, the world the world is a hard place. The world is a place where you have to learn to fucking navigate shit.
Yeah.
And if you send your kid to school and they come home and they don't tell you what happened and you can't have a rational, reasonable discussion with your child, that's on you, not the fucking world.
That's right.
It is not that big. Like, all of the stuff that we have been talking about for the last however minutes you and I have been talking about this topic is not as big as this conversation that you and I are having. Right. We're having this conversation because we're two dudes that met each other in this virtual world. This is the first time we've ever spoken, and we want to talk about it. But the reality is there is always going to be shit that happens in the world that your kid has to learn to navigate. And if you're that fucking much of a helicopter parent that you're going to pull your kid out of the world to fucking protect them, shame on you. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Let them go meet fucking trans kids. Let them go meet emo kids. Let them go meet fucking black kids, Asian kids, Indian kids, blue kids, brown kids, whatever the fuck they are. Like, stop whining and complaining that the world is going to ruin your child.
Yeah.
The world is not going to ruin your child if they come home and you love them. That's real.
Yeah.
The world is not that big of, like, it's just not that important. Keep your kids off social media. Don't let the entire world have an opinion that your kid can hear because they can't fucking comprehend it. And have a conversation with them at the goddamn dinner table about how Susie decided she's a fucking boy. And you go, really? That's interesting. Why did Susie decide that? I don't know. She's weird. Is she weird? Or did she, did you ask her? Did you have a conversation with her? Did you understand it? Because we should work to understand people. We should lead with fucking love. Don't be a goddamn loser and fucking protect your kid from every fucking inconvenience in the world.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, that's ridiculous.
And by
racism
the way,
was a thing. Sexism's a thing. It's all a fucking thing that we have to fucking navigate.
Yeah.
Stop babying your children.
Yeah.
It's hard out there.
And not only that,
Just
but
saying.
I mean, what they're going to see on social media is going to be way worse than what they see in school.
Yeah.
And I think, I can't speak for all the 3-4 friends that I'm talking about, but I can't speak for all of them if it was about transgender or if it was what was being taught. I'm not sure. But I would imagine it had something to do with the culture of where it is. You know, you mentioned middle schoolers are now having sex and blowjobs, and that is true. That's a real thing. I don't know if it wasn't because I was
I didn't either,
looking enough, but I didn't have sex in middle school.
No, but I know it happens.
It did, yeah. Did it happen as much when we were in middle school? I don't think so. Maybe. I don't remember, if I'm being honest. But I know it happens more. I know kids now are more of assholes than they were. You know, because there was assholes for sure when I was in middle school. But I know
you're
now,
37, right?
Correct.
How old?
Yeah.
What year was it when you were in high school?
I graduated in 2002.
So when did the first smartphone come out? 2001?
I think it was one. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So you were a junior in high school when the smartphone came out.
Possibly. Actually, no. I think it was just a BlackBerry and Nokia. Yeah, because the actual smartphone didn't come out till like 2003, I think, 2004 maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So imagine if you were a 14-year-old boy and you could send somebody a picture of your dick.
Yeah, I would.
You'd do it pretty fucking fast.
I would.
Without thinking about it.
Yeah.
You'd put no consideration into that.
Yeah.
You'd just be like, yeah, here's my dick.
Yeah.
I just sent it to Susie. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Right? That's
it's
it.
just showing us who we really are.
Right.
You know,
but
that's the difference. Yeah.
Like, if we did that, we would, like, the process of getting somebody a picture of our dick when we were kids was very long process.
Correct.
Like, there was cameras and developments and strangers involved.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's a click and shoot. Like, it just goes.
Yeah.
People don't change that drastically.
Right.
The things that kids are doing today are not very much different than the things that we were doing. They just have access to things that they shouldn't have access to.
Right.
And there's a generation of parents that allowed their kids on social media and allowed their kids to indulge in world views and be manipulated by the world without any sort of boundaries. They're like, sure, you can be on Instagram. Sure, you can be on TikTok. Sure, you can be on this. My daughter's allowed to be on Instagram for 1 hour a day. She has an account because she's in high school, and I want her to understand that it's a thing in the world.
Yeah. Well, they need to know.
I don't.
Yeah.
Right. But all of the idea of the culture of school is a problem for me.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Send your kid to private school if you can afford it.
Right.
But you bringing your kid home and homeschooling them, you're just as big a part of the problem.
Yeah.
We have to teach our kids to communicate with each other. We have to teach our kids to connect with each other. We have to teach our kids how to have the hard conversations about what's going on around them. We can't just take them out and be like, yeah, well, maybe the world will rectify itself by the time you're old enough to deal with it.
Yeah.
That's not going to help.
Well, I think, I agree with you. I do. Where I push back a little bit on is what you're saying is very rational and makes a lot of sense. But not every parent feels that way. And the problem is the problem is most parents that you see in public school, for whatever reason, maybe they're just not good parents, maybe they're lazy, maybe they're great parents and they just had a shitty, dealt to their hand. The problem is, though, where I think people think that the public school system and schools in general has become watered down or culture has fucked it up, whatever people think. I think the problem is not necessarily that. It's the fact that if there is a transgender kid or if there is a bully at school or if there is someone that's different or weird or emo, we all dealt with that back in the day as they were just another human. But because society and media has overcomplicated every aspect of our existence, I feel like it's getting trickled down into public schools, and parents don't know how to fucking deal with it, or they're not intelligent enough, or they don't care enough to deal with it with their kids. So now their kids are being raised like little gremlins, like assholes. They don't use those conversations. Like, what you're saying makes sense to me, but I know if I picked apart 100 middle schoolers, brought them into my house, and said, hey, Susie is now Mark. What do you think about that? Most of those kids are going to be assholes about it. And that's not because of the public school system. It's because the parents, when they get home, they're not teaching those kids how to deal with it. So the problem is not necessarily the public school system. I think the problem is just a lot of parents.
Correct.
Where those parents are keeping those kids in public schools, which, I mean, not for nothing. I don't think there's a resolution behind this, but it'd be interesting to just let's all take another break. Let's figure out a way to reset and to restructure how these parents are raising their kids and how kids are becoming. Of course, we can't do that, but I think that's the only way it would make sense, or we're just going to have to let this thing kind of level itself out and fix itself. But that, to me, as a new parent, is kind of terrifying because I just don't trust anybody else. It's very similar to where I don't like driving a vehicle. It's not because I'm a bad driver. It's because I know everyone else, the majority of people, are shitty drivers. That's what's terrifying to me. And I just don't feel like people have the same thought process as you do. If they did, I think we might be in a different situation. But that's right. Where I see it anyway.
And I don't think you're far off. And I think it comes down to parents need to parent, right? We can't count on our teachers to parent our kids. We can't count on the school board to be the parents. Like, you have to have a relationship with your kids that's full of trust and full of honesty and full of communication and full of thoughtful interactions, which is why it's so imperative that we lead with love versus leading with kindness. There's nothing wrong with leading with kindness and love, but if we're only out there focusing on the kindness, we're going to let everybody have what they want and hope for the best. That just doesn't work. That's just not a good solution to the issues that are happening. And pulling your kids out of school because you're uncomfortable with the environment, that's not the answer either, because the world is the environment. That's not just school. That's everywhere. Yeah. And if you pull your kid out and you homeschool them and you're like, oh, well, do you let your kid on social media? Like, if you're pulling your middle schooler out of school, are you a parent that allows your kid on Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram? Do they have an account on every single one of those platforms? Because if they do, and you're pulling your kid out of middle school because of the culture there, you're a fucking hypocrite and a weirdo. Yeah, that's insane. Like, that's insane. And if you're pulling them out of school because you want them to be safer because of the culture, that's insane also, because that's the culture we're living in. Yeah. And the only way you can affect the world is based on what you can reach, which means you can only reach who's in your household, right? Realistically, I only can reach who's in my house, right? So whoever's kids come to my house, whoever's parents come to my house, whatever family and friends come to my house, those are the people that I can reach. And then on your podcast, you're in your house, I'm in my office. Yeah. If they come in here and I assume that's your house, they come in here into this space where you and I are having the conversation, and they listen to it and they eavesdrop on it and they be part of it through that, and they can, shoot their opinions off and they can comment and they can get involved. And if we decide to respond instead of post and ghost, we get in there and say, hey, we're having this real life conversation about these real life things. Let's have an understanding that you're not protecting your kid by pulling them out of society. You're actually making it worse, and you're actually creating, for lack of a better word, you're creating some sort of bigotry in your kid, because they're going to know why you pulled them out. They pulled me out of school because of X, Y, or Z. Therefore, that thing is bad. If you pull me out of school because of that, that means that's bad, and I can't be near it. And not only is it bad, it's so bad that I have to live in fear of it. It's not bad enough for me to go deal with it. It's bad enough for me to go and be scared of it. So now anytime that thing comes up that you pulled me out of school for, I'm not only thinking it's bad, but I'm fucking scared of it. And if I'm living a life where I'm scared of whatever that thing is, that the most valuable people in my life, my mom and my dad, who are supposed to protect me and love me, told me that that thing is so bad that you can't go near it, how are you going to behave as a 10, 11, 12-year-old person? You're going to live in fear. You're going to be so scared of that thing that now that thing is going to be the devil. It is going to be a demon. It is going to be evil. So now you're creating this being that has decided that this thing is so scary that now they have to live in fear for the rest of their life of that thing because you weren't good enough at your job as a parent to look at your kid and say, hey, I understand that that's what Susie's doing, or hey, I understand that that's what Mark is doing. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's figure out why that's going on. What would you do if you were in that situation? Why don't you feel the way that Susie feels? What do you like about your body? What do you like about the person that you are? What do you like about your world? How many people look at their kids and go, how was your day today? What'd you do?
Yeah.
Like, how many people? I know,
Not
like, I don't do it all the time. I struggle
lot,
with it
I'm sure.
sometimes.
Yeah, not a lot.
How many people
I
go
know,
to... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I know not a lot of people, only because, and I think what you're saying makes sense, because laterally to everything that we're saying, instead of parent needs to parent, unfortunately, they're also using these devices. Yeah. So parents and myself, I'm going to try my hardest. Of course, it's going to be very difficult, but that is the problem, right? Not only do we try to protect our children from the crazy culture and all that, but we're also consuming that crazy culture. So it's very hypocritical for us to, shield our children and the youth from that when that is what's happening. We're involved in it. We're immersed in it. And it's okay. We can't live in that fear. Like you said, we have to kind of embrace the culture and just do better at educating, not just the youth, but educating each other too, because that's one thing I notice with friends and families when I'm having conversations, whether it's like this or something else, is we need to just not, taboo subject. We don't want to step away from it. We need to fucking talk about it. Let's dive in deep to it and let's discuss it, because that's how we're all going to learn from each other,
Well, we've always had things that happen for adults that we protect our children from.
Right.
That's part of it, right? Like we don't drop our kids off at a bar and be like, have fun with your friends, honey.
Right,
like we don't do that because it's not culturally appropriate. That's why we have drinking ages. That's why we have smoking ages. That's why we have gambling ages, because their little brains aren't qualified to navigate that shit. Most adults' brains aren't qualified to navigate some of that shit.
Yeah.
So that's why you keep them off of social media. That's why you keep them off of those things and you have conversations with them as to why they're not on there.
That's right.
I knew why I wasn't allowed to go into the porn room at the video rental store as a kid.
Yeah.
I looked at that curtain or that room and I said, can I go look at those movies? And it was like, no, those are for adults. Mm-hmm. Well, why? Because they're for adults. Well, why are they for adults? Because there's material in those movies that you can't watch. Yeah. And it continues to be an explanation until the why stops.
Yeah, through conversation.
You'll learn.
Yeah.
You'll see when you have a 2-year-old and they go, but why? But why? Yeah. But why? And you can either go, because I said so, or you can continue to explain it until they understand it. Yeah. You have to decide how much work you want to put into the relationship that you love.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're exhausted and we don't want to put the work in.
But it's important. I could see how.
But relationships are work.
Yeah.
Work. And that means you can't just pull your kid out because you're scared of something. Yeah. They have to push through it. Honestly, what are you doing for what's the benefit to your kid to pull them out because you don't agree with the public school system? That's the public school system is going to be the public work system.
Right.
That's how it's always mirrored. That's how it's always been.
Yeah.
At what point are you going to let them go out into the world and explore it? Because I love teenagers and toddlers. I say it all the time. Teenagers and toddlers are the same type of assholes. They're exploring the world on their own terms. They're looking at the world and they're going and saying things like, oh, I'm going to do this. And you can look at them and say, don't touch that. It's hot. And they'll go, yeah, and they'll touch it and they'll burn themselves and they'll cry and you'll go, I told you that was hot. That's what hot is. And the teenagers do the same thing. They do this thing where they explore the world and they look at the world from a place of, fuck you, I'm going to try it. And if I get hurt, too bad. Right. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to do this thing. And it's my job as the parent when they're teenagers and toddlers to be like, how'd that go? Did that work out the way you had it planned? Why didn't it work out the way you had it planned? They're in a self-discovery mode.
Yeah.
When they're from like the age of like 5 to 12, 13, they're not in that mode anymore. They're not in that. They're in the watch and do phase, the mimic. Monkey see, monkey do. Yeah. So they're trying to mimic everything around them. So the more behavior you have that's positive when they're from 5 to 12, that's what they're going to mimic, and that's what they're going to try and become and do. They're going to and then they're going to get to their teenage years, and you're going to have to navigate that. You're going to have to navigate the fact that you helped create whatever being they're becoming.
Right.
That's when, like, 5 to 13 is when you're a dictator. It's when you're like, these are the rules, this is what you're following, this is what you're doing, and they're listening and absorbing and trying to appease. And then they get back to teenager, which is that toddler world where they're like, I got this. I'm old enough. Fuck you, I'm going to do it. And then they fall on their face, and you have to look at them and go, oh, how'd that work out? Did that go the way you had it planned? Right? And you teach them different ways and different aspects of their life as they mature and as they get older. Sure. And if we're pulling them out of the world and saying, I'm going to keep you safe, honey, I'm going to put you in a box so nothing hurts you, I fear for your child.
Yeah.
I fear for the person that they're going to end up being in a world that is hard and aggressive.
Yeah. And
like there are some fucking mean people out there.
Yeah. And not only you shielding them from, that, because that's a big thing too, right? Like you mentioned earlier where bullying was probably one of the best things that ever happened to you. I know me, when I was bullied, I learned so much, the adversity, and that's a big characteristic that I think people need. You need a little bullying. You need a little busting each other's balls. You need a little craziness. And that is what's kind of cool about the public school system. I think you made a good point to where you need to just, as parents, we just need to parent more. And as humans, we just need to be better humans and lead with love, because that is the most important, I think, part of this entire conversation. I didn't think it was going to go this route, but I'm super happy it did, because I really enjoyed it. And I honestly want to have you back on, or maybe I could be on yours, and we'll definitely do. Yeah, we'll do something, because this was 2 hours and 20 minutes. So
was it really?
Yeah, I could probably go.
Where
for
are you?
another
Where are you out
2
of?
hours. Florida.
Okay.
So I'm East Coast. So yeah, we'll be able to do this more often for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if I was local, I'd say I'd head to your house.
Dude, I got to get you up here. I like to do my podcast live. I think it's a different experience.
Bro, so I used to do them live before the pandemic, and I miss it for sure. Now we're in a bigger house. It's a little bit more secluded. So eventually I want to get to where I can have a studio and I don't have to have, people in my house all the time. Cause I was doing like 2 episodes a week. So my wife started getting a little annoyed when people were coming to the house, and then the pandemic happened, and then I started doing it virtually. And now I'm like, I'm so spoiled, because not only do I get easily to have a conversation with you virtually, but I've had conversations with people in Australia and UK and, people I'll probably never meet. And that's what's kind of cool about it. But I agree with you. Like the whole fact of in person, there's no lag, there's no interrupting. It's, you're next to each other. It's that intimate conversation. So it's definitely way better in person. But I've enjoyed this, man. It's been awesome to talk and to learn a bunch from you. Before I do let you go, though, do me a favor, give a shout out to your social, your podcast, all that stuff, because I want people to come find you as well.
Okay, so on Instagram and TikTok, we're at Money Supports Happy. You can see the podcast, Money Supports Happy, on Spotify, iHeart, Amazon. It's on all the platforms, YouTube. The video version is on YouTube and Spotify. My company is Burden Media. You can check us out. And then I'm Danny LeGare at the Danny LeGare on Instagram. You can follow me there too.
Cool, my man. Danny, honestly, man, I've learned a ton, and I've gotten some good value out of this, and I know the listener has as well. And, I think it's important, you mentioned this a lot, leading with love is huge, but also having these conversations come into resolutions. I don't think we solved probably any of the topics we talked about. I don't think there was a lot of resolutions to anything, and that's okay.
Pretty sure we solved world hunger.
World hunger was one that we solved. The rest we did not, though. The world hunger thing's an easy one. But the rest were a little challenging. But I think that's what's so key, right? We have to have these conversations to come to a resolution. It's not going to happen overnight. And to think that it would be ignorant. So I just appreciate your honesty, your candidness, and everything about it. So I definitely want to do this again, man. So thank you again for everything.
Yeah, dude, I had a lot of fun. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Indeed, buddy. All right, man. Stay warm up there, yeah?
Yeah, brother.
All right, dude. Talk soon. Oh, hey there. First of all, thanks for making it to the end of this video. Not a lot of people do, according to the YouTube analytics, but I do want to say thanks for listening to this. There's some more episodes if you want to check those out, and they're all just as good. But if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out those timestamps below to reference some of the topics I talked about, as well as some discount links to some of our sponsors and affiliates. But thanks for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time.